line, can you up the volume a little bit? I know you turned it down. Okay.
Oh, that's fine.
Is it up at the top? It's been louder before.
Yeah, I turned it down
Because of the feedback.
the volume control.
So, I could hear it, but
Okay,
I just had to
we're-
struggle.
Waiting on Salina Media Corp. We're back, and I believe Commissioner Davis wanted to make a comment before we got started.
Yeah, just so we could keep all the topics together. I did vote in favor of looking at this agreement and see if we can make it work, but I wanted to stress again that it's so important that the health aspects of this line up straight. And, this plan looks easy. Getting the health things to line up is going to be the difficult part. And I wouldn't want the headline tomorrow to be Celina votes to open baseball next week. That's by no means what we're saying. Because we may have to look at issues, if a team from, I'm not going to necessarily bring up other cities' names, but if there's a known hotspot city in the state of Kansas, gosh, do you let that team come? Do they have to come here 2 weeks early in quarantine? I mean, those are all parts of the health equation that have to be met. As a physician, I'm concerned because anything that we do that increases our risk significantly of importing cases, a couple of weeks later, puts a strain on the hospital. And we have limited resources here to, we can take care of a lot of people who get sick with this if it's spread over a real long period of time. What we can't handle is a whole lot of people getting sick in a short period of time. So it's a good plan, but the situation has to be just right.
This Commissioner Ryan, I would echo your sentiments, and I think people are motivated to do the right thing about this and remember the safeguards they need to take. But it is easy to get caught up in the events and the activities you're doing. It needs to be reinforced constantly that these things need to be paramount in everybody's mind as we try to make these different services available. They still got to keep that on the top of their thoughts.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mike, that leads us to Custom Kemps of America, lead sled.
Otherwise known as the KKOA lead sled. Very similar conversation in terms of economic development impact. Strong desire on the part of hotels and restaurateurs and the chamber to try to facilitate that event. So recognizing that was a discussion point, we tried to staff that through a little bit. Something that we've done for a number of years now is track the amount of time, staff time, that's involved with the three aspects of the KKOA car show. One, they have a drag on Thursday night, and drag races out at East Crawford Recreation Area. And what you may not be aware of is there's concrete barriers that are stored out there that belong to the city and private business. Our staff sets those up, helps in terms of kind of the logistics of the layout and striping and traffic control, and and snow fencing and crowd control. There's just a lot of effort that goes into that we provide as city support of that event. And there's also the parade in the downtown. Public Works provides barricades and those type of things, and the police department provides crowd control. And then the car show itself, preparation of Oakdale Park and getting it ready, and then providing some support during the event is the third item. So that's something that we've tracked for a number of years. It's something that we're mindful of, and I'm not sure whether that's previously been reported to the governing body, but the parade represents about 36 hours of staff commitment. The car show historically represents about 154 hours of staff commitment, and the drag races represent 538 hours of staff commitment. So you can see how extensive the drag races are. So in total, we put in about 728 hours into that event. So I had a staff and I had a conversation about, what that might look like. We've had ongoing conversations about the drags and how much work that is. I had reached out to Jerry Titus, the sponsor of the event, explained our circumstances as it related to staffing and budget and the fiscal impacts on our budget. So I broached with him. Now, what I might be able to recommend recognizing the economic impact of the event was that we might be able to continue to support the parade and the car show, but I was asking whether he could take on the drags or just not have the drags as part of this event. I provided sufficient background that he sounded obviously relieved to find out that I had a proposal rather than just suggesting that we had to cancel the event. I told him it was ultimately the governing body's decision, but he was very receptive to his organization and local supporters that he has here in the community taking responsibility for the drags. So if you're inclined to try to facilitate the Custom Chems of America car show, then my proposed approach would be that we expect the organizers of the event to be fully responsible for the drags. Obviously, police time, we might make police available, but expect them to pay the cost of that. And then they could just choose not to do the drags at all. But the feedback I've had from CVB in particular is that the car show is as big or bigger than the River Festival, just in terms of hotel stays and starts on Thursday night and runs through Sunday. So it's the 1.5 million number is what we've heard before, but it is a significant visitation generator and got our attention as an economic development event. So that's really all I have. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Franz, what's the dollar equivalence of, say, 150 hours of staff time? In my head, that's going to be about $3,000 or $3,500, I would guess.
Yeah.
That would be an average of $20 an hour.
I figured at $20 an hour is $3,080.
Yeah.
And then the 36 would be about $620, so about $3,700.
And my point is, if that's the case with this event, notwithstanding the health issues, since this is likely draws on a national level rather than a state level, we'll need to be very careful about that, and I hope you talk to him about that also, because if we have a second go around of this and it hits before July 23rd, or if things go south for us, and we've seen in Ford County and those other counties that can happen very quickly, we may have to scotch it, and I hope he knows that. But my comment is that for the investment in the car show and the parades, call it $4,000, and a $1.5 million impact, this is much more, has a much greater return on investment, if you want to look at it that way, than the baseball tournament issue did. So while I have concerns about this from a health standpoint, I have less dollar concerns, because I think it's something we can probably manage, perhaps even we may not have to bring additional staff back to manage it, or we may be able to do it just on a temporary basis.
With respect to the knowledge of the health indicators, I did have that conversation with him. Mr. Titus is from Missouri, so he shared with me that the governor of Missouri had recently reopened, and things were starting to happen in Missouri. And I explained to him we have a very specific Kansas plan issued by the governor in phases, and I had actually suggested that he need to coordinate closely with CVB about the details of that plan, the timing as it currently sits, and I explained to him that those are all target dates that could change depending on health indicators. It is in the end of July, so hopefully there's a little bit of time capacity there. If something gets set back, I wouldn't necessarily cancel the event, but we'd have to pay attention to that. But I do, in speaking with the CVB, they have a very good working relationship with him. They provide quite a bit of support, and I'm fairly confident they can hold his hand in that regard.
Commissioner Hodges, are we going to give Jerry parameters for how we want the drag races set up so that they're safe? Because obviously if we're putting 540 man-hours in it, we do a lot of preparation and take a lot of logistics into consideration. Will he receive information on how we expect to see that set up? Or do we just sign off on all liability?
Well, two things. We have very detailed plans that we've refined over time, aerial maps with configuration on them. And then secondly, we do require them to get insurance and provide proof of insurance to us. And so they are kind of that intermediary that they have a standard that has to be met. So in my conversation with him, he was aware that for them to get the insurance, he knows that those concrete barriers have to be set up to the satisfaction of his insurance provider. So combine, our mapping and his insurance provider's expectations, he would have a standard to meet. Now, having said that, we do a lot in the way of snow fencing for crowd control. If you've ever looked, people park out there, days in advance trying to get a prime spot. He seemed very focused on just the barriers and kind of a minimal approach. But if it's his event and he meets the minimum from our perspective, we're either very involved or we aren't involved. If he meets that insurance standard, I think we'd have to call that good.
Okay, any other questions? Do we have any callers that would like to address this, Mike?
I assume so. If anyone wishes to speak on this topic, please press *9. Yep. Eric Brown from the Chamber, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Mike. Really don't have too much to add to this at this point. The only, I think, the timing of what you all just approved, the transferee agreement with the Educational Car Museum. I mean, that's the only other point that I would make is you're going to see, obviously not this year, but when that car museum gets built, there's quite a bit of fabric in this community around cars transferred. And this is just one of those long-time events that if we aren't able to have it and we lose it, that will be a huge hole to try to fill.
You still there?
It's something I just wanted to point out and appreciate what you all are doing.
Thank you, Eric. Any other calls?
No.
Mayor Hoppick here. I agree with Commissioner Franz as far as the dollars that we have as far as time involved. I think it's something that's very advantageous for our community, mainly the hoteliers and the restaurants. Hopefully at that time of year we'll be able to be maybe back to full capacity. Also, I'd be concerned about losing it in years to come because it is a nice economic generator for those industries. So, any other comments or questions? If not, I'd accept a motion from the commission.
Mayor Hoppick, Commissioner Franz, I would move that we accept the staff recommendation to proceed with the event as they have, as they've recommended.
Commissioner Ryan, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the KKOA Lead Sled Car Show as presented. All those in favor?
Question.
Yep.
It won't affect the vote, but Commissioner Hodges had asked a question about the safety and the setup, and Mr. Craig said that we have suggestions and their insurer would want it set up a certain way, but do want to have some assurance that whatever minimum standards we have plus their insurance company would be adhered to, just as far as crowd safety.
Right.
Even though they're taking over the sponsorship of it, but the safety is still, I would think, we'd still have a major say in.
Yeah, they go through a special event permit process, so they apply for, staff reviews it, including our risk manager, and then we issue a permit with detailed conditions imposed on it, so as a condition of that approval. So we can certainly require that they provide insurance, that they meet the standards of the insurance, and we can stipulate what our expectations are about the concrete barriers in particular.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Mayor Hoppe.
Commissioner Hodges,
Oh,
follow-up question really quickly. Have we, once a special events permit has been issued, have we ever withdrawn that permission if we see that an event is not being set up in the manner to which we were, that we stipulated?
I think we have a subsequent year, and I think we have been at the event and forced compliance before. I don't know that, and I mentioned earlier the Sports Car Club of America. The condition I placed on that permit is that we could cancel it on observation of a violation. It wasn't necessary, but I reserved that as a possible consequence. So we could certainly do that again, and we will be mindful of being out there and making sure it's set up correctly in advance.
Commissioner Franz, just I don't know if it's a modification of the motion or not, but, unstated there was the health conditions, that we need to be in a good position in terms of the COVID issue to proceed with this. At some point,
And this is a good example of that. The special event permit is applied for early. In fact, I think we have the application already. So this might be an example where we're issuing it far enough in advance that we would need to articulate that, subject to the health plan and any changes that might come. So, number one, I don't feel like I have the authority to grant anything to the contrary. So we've got to pass that along as a condition of approval.
Commissioner Hodges, and while something I'm struggling with, and not that it's going to make any difference one way or the other, but, I understand that the plight of our hoteliers and our restaurateurs and all of our industries that rely on visitors for their bottom line. But I keep coming back to something Commissioner France said earlier about, are we going to be attracting folks from hotspots bringing COVID-19 into our community? And at what point do we say, even though visitors and tourism and these special events in the past have been big sales tax generators, maybe, I just think it's important that we weigh not only the benefit, but also the potential cost in terms of potentially bringing more coronavirus cases into the community.
Commissioner Davis, and if you look at the places that were successful, if I can use that term, in controlling is really not the proper word to use, but in getting closer to recovery the quickest, they lock the door. Nobody out, nobody in.
Commissioner.
If it's helpful, Mike's Craig here. A couple of points of clarification. There's a lot of conversation early on about turkey hunters from Colorado coming across the Kansas line, and I was on call after call, day after day, where they're talking about that. And the guidance that ultimately came out from the state of Kansas was, if you entered the state from Colorado to turkey hunt, the expectation was that you quarantine yourself for 2 weeks, and then you're welcome to turkey hunt on the 15th day. And I say that just because I think that is still the guidance. That's what I relayed to the Custom Car Club, is that's the expectation if you come from Colorado. Now, we're not in a position to police that. We weren't out there checking, people's occupancy. But the other thing I would tell you is, there's each time the governor's rolled out the executive orders or the reopening plan, the focus is on the county, but there's also a comment made that counties and cities can impose restrictions greater than the state. In all honesty, I haven't researched whether that's cities with their own health department, whatever the case may be, but there is some presumption that in addition to counties, cities have authority to be more restrictive. I'm not suggesting that, but I guess my point is that there's nothing that I'm aware of on the state level that addresses hotspots within the county and within the state. There are travel quarantines for Rhode Island, and I may not get all the states right. I know Colorado for sure. But there's not a lot of guidance about how you stop people at the border or what you do, other than there's a recommendation that anyone that enters the state from one of those locations, whether they're residents travel there and come back, or whether they're from that state coming into Kansas to do business, the presumed expectation is they're going to quarantine. I'm not naive enough to think that
Commissioner Franz here, one of the advantages I think we have with this kind of event is they get a special event permit. It's over a course of 3 days. It's limited as opposed to being a season-long schedule or whatever. And we probably have the capacity as part of the special event permit to, ask him to show us his registration list, and if there are hot spots, mark them and say, you need to return the registration fee to these folks, and they are not to participate not because we don't like them, but because of circumstances in their community. Hopefully by July, those will be cooled off. And I don't know if I see the Mr. City Attorney looking at me with askance, but I don't see any reason why we could not, apply that sort of pressure to achieve that end. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There is that balance, and hopefully, if the health situation resolves between now and then, that won't be an issue. But
So, Mike Scragg, just to be clear, I've only had to issue one special event permit in kind of this hybrid situation, but what I was comfortable with reviewing what was out there already was conveying the travel quarantine guidelines, conveying that expectation. They committed back to me they wouldn't take registrations from people from Colorado, but I stopped short of making them show me the registration, and I stopped short of picking out Kansas hotspots. If the expectation is we're going to go to Kansas hotspots, then I think we need to know more about our local authority. I guess, well, I'm sure the legal counsel will have advice, but if that's your expectation, then I think we have more to talk about, and administratively, we've got more to figure out.
Mayor, Commissioners Greg Binkson, legal counsel, I certainly didn't mean to look askance, but what was going through my mind was the point that Mr. Scragg just made. I think in terms of conversations with Mr. Titus, that sort of plan, I think, would best be discussed front end rather than just prior to the event. So that's the only reason I was processing.
But I guess just to be clear, unless the motion's amended otherwise, I don't think the direction at the moment is to pick out additional hotspots beyond what KDHE has provided in the way of travel quarantine guidance. If that is your expectation, then I would suggest that the motion needs to be amended.
Well, and Commissioner Day, we won't know those hot spots until probably July 3rd.
But even so, if that's your desire, then I think I do need to reserve with Mr. Titus. We'll be talking with you closer to the event, but we reserve the right to self-identify hotspots to preclude participation, if that's what you want
I would
done.
think that would be included in the general, specifically vague statement following with local health guidelines, because at that point I would ask the county to set those.
Well, I guess that's my question, is
limits
what I'm
for
hearing
us.
from you is a heightened standard above and beyond the county and the state. If it's just whatever the county or the state does, I can certainly relay that. But if the expectation is we are going to create our own heightened list of hotspots and heightened expectation, the sooner I know that, the better.
I would rely on our county health
The
department.
governor's been
personally.
giving us, Commissioner Ryan, the governor's been giving us that guidance, hadn't they? Don't they? They've recognized the states that are hotspots and you shouldn't travel to or not come back to.
Correct. But they haven't done any individual
them
counties or
continuing
packing
to
plans.
update that. I've got a question, maybe I shouldn't ask, but given the advances in the testing that's being done and the higher availability of it, could you ask people to test as they approach the community as part of their participation in the event?
Boy, that's an
They're going to line up and drive around, they can stop for a quick test.
That's an test availability question, and I don't know the answer to that. I mean, on the one hand, you hear they're in such short supply, and then Walmart seems to come up with them and can have a drive-through event at KHP. But
My thought was would it be even legal to
right.
request that?
Mayor Hoppick here, and
Intrusion
again,
that you wouldn't want to do.
I know
because
we're
you
trying
offend
to
the
we're trying to protect the community, but being at the crossroads of two interstates, I'm guessing we have individuals from all over the United States staying in our hotels and all this summer and eating in our restaurants. So I'm not, as much as I want to protect us, I'm not sure we can protect us 100%. I mean, based on where we're at. So to me, it's a common sense. We talk to the director of the KKOA, and you tell him that we may, if let's say Colorado, just as it's close, became a hot spot again, and we'd say, hey, if we see something like that happen, we may request that you ask those individuals not to come into to the show or something. I don't know, but that's hard to do. I don't know if we start trying to pick out places, or Phoenix, Arizona, or something. It gets pretty
The mayor's
dicey.
correct. I
Yeah.
apologize for even asking the question.
Well, Commissioner Franz here, I made the motion. I'm going to let it stand as it is, which carries the implication that we would follow the state and county guidelines.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we have staff who are qualified to point at states or at localities and say, this meets the threshold and this doesn't, Obviously, we can look at a map and see some places have bigger numbers than others, but I don't know that we have the ability to say, okay, this is epidemiological problem versus this one is not. For example, we look at Ford County and Seward County. They're both have high numbers in relation to but Seward's a little lower, so maybe coming from Liberal, you're okay, and coming from Dodge City, you're not, because there's 200 fewer cases in Seward County. Well, if I'm in Ford County, I might take exception to that, So I think that's going
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
A step beyond the intent.
Commissioner Hodges, I just have an informational question to ask. Doesn't the KDHE have guidelines in terms of travel to and from certain states in terms of quarantining oneself? And I mean, to me, I would think that it would be pretty commonsensical to align, any monitoring with that. I mean, if the state of Kansas, and it's probably been a week or two since I looked at the KDHE COVID website, but I'm relatively sure that they have identified whether that looks like Colorado or Illinois or, wherever. I think, if we are talking about following county and state guidelines, I think it just makes sense to point out to them that per the governor's office, that registrants from those specific states, in order to participate, would need to quarantine for 2 weeks prior to being able to participate in the KKOA.
No, correct. I agree that is the case. That is what I told the Sports Car Club of America, and I directed them to the state's quarantine guidance. And the state calls out counties in Colorado, but to my knowledge, the state doesn't call out any hotspots within the state of Kansas. Okay. And so, if I'm relying on the KDHE guidance, it would be that,
right.
But it's not to that next level of conversation we seem to be having.
But at least it would give us some from
Right.
national in terms of other states.
And by the end of July, it'll all have evolved
Yeah,
to be completely
it'll be
different.
different. Don't know how, but it'll probably be different.
Once again, just to be clear, that's my intent
Okay.
in the motion, is that
Okay.
we would follow the state and
Well, good.
county guidance.
Commissioner Hodges, I'm glad we talked that through. Thank you. I feel
Okay.
reassured.
We have a motion and a second to approve the KKOA Lead Sled Car Show as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0. Okay. Neighborhood centers.
I think that was 2 slides, and I'm not sure how long, but I'm going to hand the rest off to Chris.
Yes, Chris Cotton, Parks Director again. The neighborhood centers and facilities include the Friendship Center, the Carver Center, Indian Rock Lodge, and the Kiva at Thomas Park. There is really no economic impact to those facilities. However, they are very popular in the community for birthday parties, class reunions, events of that nature. We would recommend reopening as the plan allows. Our facilities staff does clean the Carver and Friendship Centers. The Kiva and the Indian Rock Lodge are picked up in the past by seasonal park staff, so we would have to adjust our staffing levels to have somebody go in and clean those two facilities, pick up after the events. Obviously, most of our staff is mowing, but that is something we think we can accommodate. Just wanted to point that out. There's two different groups that clean those facilities, but our recommendation would be to reopen them as the plan allows.
And as a clarification, the maintenance staff was not furloughed and didn't have their work schedule reduced because we recognize the workload and the importance of what they were doing.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Cotton? Yes, so do we have anyone on the phone that would like to comment on the opening of the neighborhood centers?
If there's anybody that wishes to speak on this topic, please press star 9. We're down to staff and the Chamber of Commerce at this point, and I don't see any.
Okay, with that, I bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move we accept the staff's recommendation on neighborhood centers, reopen as plan allows.
Commissioner Hodges, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve staff's recommendation for neighborhood centers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0. Okay. Therapeutic Recreation.
Yes, Therapeutic Recreation. We do have the ability to meet the mass gathering criteria. Social distancing is possible. There is no economic impact, no hotel stays. It does recover 45% of its cost recovery of its operations. However, that does fall within our cost recovery pyramid. However, due to the number of part-time staff hours to help make the program go, with no part-time staff, we would recommend not having the program for 2020.
Okay, questions for staff?
Commissioner Hodges, the cost to the city is actually like $28,000, or is it like $14,000, closer to $14,000 once you consider the cost recovery, or does the 28 include that?
That cost recovery is for the whole year. That's just, we wanted to let you know where the program stands as a whole.
Okay, so that's the,
That's
whatever, the 55% is the 28,000 right there.
Give or take, yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Davis, are any of these classes such they could be taught by non-paid volunteers?
Well,
who would be motivated to do it for whatever reason?
I think that we would need somebody with a background in working with our special populations to do these classes. So that's definitely something we could look into. However, we utilize staff that have ongoing worked with these adults. It's something I can look into, but at this point, I don't have an answer for you on that.
What would be a typical example that people might be familiar with as far as the activity?
Some of our cooking classes that we offer for life skills, and some of our day trips that we take. Okay. We also have a dance that we do in the summer for the population as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Hodges, obviously, the dance might be impossible, but some of the other activities could accommodate the social distancing?
They could with the proper staffing, yes, ma'am.
The difficulty is we assumed in not having that, furloughing that staff.
Any other questions? Do we have any callers, or are we down to the two?
Yep. Unless the chamber wants to address it. If anyone wishes to speak on this topic, please press star 9. Nope.
Okay, if not, I'll bring it back to the commission.
One question, Commissioner Davis. As far as volunteers being used or even charging them, much like, I forget the name of the program what's run through, what's the summer, the educational program has a cute little name. The classes, no, the volunteer, like they teach yoga and they teach
Class. Is that what you're
Class,
talking
thank
about?
you. That's
Class.
it's called
Yeah,
class.
classes.
Class.
Yeah.
Thank you. Could any of these be incorporated into a program similar to that?
Obviously, I could look into that. But again, we have no recreation staff to oversee any of it because the one full-time staff member is furloughed. So we can reach out to people, but we don't have any real way to facilitate that or oversee what they're doing.
So even the class program would have to, you'd still have to have that person
We'd still need to coordinate, yes, sir.
coordinator. And that's no one else sitting around doing nothing in the department. I mean, not doing nothing, but who would have the extra.
No, sir.
Okay. It just seems like there's probably teaching talent in the community and just no way to hook them up with those who would gladly, well, they're going to be paying for the class anyway. Is the class program open? Is anybody?
Commissioner Hodges, the public library isn't open at this time. I don't know what their future,
Yeah, I do not know what their intention is. But to say that they're paying, the way we approach it, they're only paying 45% of the cost.
But now that does, I understand your point. Some people in that group could pay more. I mean, if you can get it for 20, why pay 40? Or why offer to pay 40? But I was trying to think of a way the class could be held without necessarily being a financial responsibility for Parks and Recs, but just sort of like a pass-through. But you'd still need this, you would need somebody to supervise it.
We'd still need somebody to coordinate and supervise, yes, sir.
Okay. All righty. Thanks for indulging me.
Okay, bring it back to the commission. Do we have any kind of motion?
just,
I'll have a
I
motion.
just can't, I
Yeah.
can't, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah,
I can't support cutting that, Commissioner Hodges, sorry.
And it may well, Commissioner Davis, maybe there's some other way that these classes can be advertised, not through the city directly, but privately. I don't have an example to give you, but hey, I teach cooking, call me, and I'll set a class up.
Well, that is the way the class program works. It works off of volunteers. They set their own fees, but that would have to be coordinated through the library and through their coordinator, and it would be independent of our program. It would be something that might address the same population, but it would be not our program. Commissioner Franz here, I would move that we concur with the staff recommendation.
Got a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Ryan, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve staff's recommendation to cancel the Therapeutic Recreation for 2020. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
3-2. Okay, that leads us to Camp Salina.
Yes, Camp Celina is our summer daycare option for the community. The program dates are May 26th through July 31st. It is also overseen by, organized by one full-time staff member. That staff member is furloughed. We do have multiple part-time staff that actually run the day-to-day operations of that. They will not be hired back this summer. So again, we do not have the staff to run the program. We were very excited. This program has grown tremendously since we moved it to the Fieldhouse. However, at this time, due to staffing limitations, we need to recommend the cancellation of Camp Salina.
Is this held just at the Fieldhouse, Camp Salina?
Yes, sir. At one time, when we first started it, we still tried to run it at Friendship Center as well, but as of last summer, we combined them to one location. It was much more successful.
And what hours does it run from?
If memory serves, 7:30 in the morning till 5 or 5:30 in the evening.
And you had 75 participants? Is that what it
Unique
said?
participants. That means we have different participants each. We don't always have the same people. Yes, sir.
What was the cost recovery on it? Do we have that?
We don't have that on here. I can look into that for you.
When do individuals, Mayor Hoppick here, when do individuals usually sign up for Camp Salina, I guess? When would registration be? Would we already be doing that at this time? Have we received calls?
We have received lots of calls, yes, sir.
It'd be interesting. I'd like to kind of know what the cost recovery is, I guess, because I know there's definitely a shortage of daycare in Celina.
Under pros, it says offers important daycare, covers expenses.
Yeah.
Does that speak to that?
Mike, Jeff's on the phone. He would have that at his fingertips.
Jeff, are you there?
Deputy Director, Parks and Recreation. Last year, our revenues for Camp Salina was $61,000 and our expenses were $51,000. I believe my memory serves, it was 110% cost recovery.
Jeff, this Mayor Hoppick, do we have the staff that would run this? Are they full-time and are they furloughed currently?
The one staff who is full-time, he is furloughed currently. The remainder are part-time staff.
Jeff, this is Mike. Are there support staff that aren't expensed but would be necessary to be in the building or provide other types of support? Just want to make sure when we talk about cost recovery, we're accounting for it all.
Typically, there's usually a building supervisor for the Fieldhouse who's present during the camp.
Which isn't expense to the program, which is not expensed.
Is
Indirect expense is not
Right.
normally part of the cost recovery.
Jeff, is that individually current on a work share where he's in the building at all now?
There's no one in the building at the Fieldhouse
Okay.
currently.
Would that, Mayor Hoppick here, would that individual be a necessity to the program to be there?
We would need a full-time person available, someone who's representing the city and representing the building.
Is that what that other full-time staff person is?
I'm assuming as the class is off doing something, our doors are open and general public can also circulate in and out of the building.
So we're really short a staff person on the cost analysis.
Yeah, they're kind of there
Because they were
maintaining the
already
building
there. They were
generally.
already in the
Right.
building if the
Building
building
was
was
already open to
open.
the public, so
And I know we have not got to Fieldhouse, it's next. Are we planning on the Fieldhouse being closed all summer then? That's the analysis of that, okay.
Yeah, our recommendation is do large tournaments only.
Could I make a
Commissioner
suggestion that we
Franz here,
visit
is
this after we do the field house?
What's that?
Can we come back to this after we make a decision about the field house?
Commissioner Franz here, is it possible to open the building just for the
It is.
Camp Salina and not have it open to the general public?
You know, from an emergency access standpoint, I guess they could exit, but if you have a parent coming to pick up their child, the doors would be locked, I guess. I mean,
Mayor
if
Hoppier, so what you're saying is we
organized
usually have
activity
somebody
over-
there at the circulation table?
Right.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. If they're having an organized activity on the turf, we either leave the building open without someone there kind of monitoring who's coming and going, or we secure the building from a,
Or we post a phone number on the front door, so when somebody comes there to get the kid, they can call a staff person and they can deliver the
yeah.
child to the front door.
And that person, I'm assuming, could be a part-time. I mean, we're not talking necessarily a full-time employee.
Another thing that goes on with the summer camp is that we also send the facilities maintenance division through several times a day to help with cleaning things up. And right now, they're not scheduled to be in the facility to clean. They're on other things. Just wanted to point that out.
Commissioner
that-
Hodges here.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask about the status of the USD 305 lunch program, the free lunch program, because I know that the Fieldhouse was one of the places that people could go for the free lunch. Do you have any idea whether or not that program is going to continue this year or not?
We have not addressed that. We have not gone down that road yet until we know the status of whether the field house is going to be open or closed, or if we're going to have the programs.
So perhaps we should address the field house first. When the other question I was going to ask was there any other agency in town that had been contacted about taking this over?
No, sir.
Okay.
The YMCA still does their camp SWAT.
They do still have a
and
summer
so
camp.
that's something similar, so.
Because there might be some churches or other large organizations that could, I don't know if they could do 75, but it's not 75 at one time.
Yes.
Oh, it is 75 at one time, okay.
Actually, I mean, the number that was provided was the aggregate of however many they had per day times the number of days. So my question was, how many individual, campers do we address? So my understanding is there's 75 unique
Children that day.
children, and it may be 61 day and, 68 the next day, but when you
So that's
add them all up,
75 daycare slots
yeah.
per day that disappear.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 75 every day, but we had 75
Average,
unique names
yeah,
that
that's what- average.
participated in
Yeah,
the
average
program.
is 75, yeah.
And having just closed the pool, I
Yeah.
know that's a substantial piece of daycare. for
Do we
people.
have a maximum number that we can take into that program on a daily basis?
Get Jeff on that.
Have to unmute him first. Jeff, are you there? Did you hear the question? Maximum that one person can supervise?
There is a maximum based on the license from the state of Kansas, but I'm not aware of what the maximum is. It's really based on a ratio of the number of instructors or leaders or counselors to the number of students.
And the
Well, it
other,
looks like about
did I-
7 to 1
That'd be
ratio.
5 to 1.
Jeff, this is Mayor Hoppick. I see that and I know there's a lot of regulations after going to Garden City and looking at the daycare. It states in here that it has to be state licensed. Is that just one of the individuals, or how does that work as far as licensing for the individuals that are running Camp Celina?
The licensing is based on a certain individual being responsible for the program, and the license is tied to that individual being the responsible person for the camp and the licensure. That individual is a part-time employee.
so that might be analogous to child care employees having to be licensed, or meet certain basic state licensing requirements.
Commissioner Franz here, I think it's just licensed as a child care program, and they probably do have a lead person who has to take responsibility for complying with the program, but it's basically just a licensed child care program that we run for, 2 months, the way it looks like.
In a nice air-conditioned building when it's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Travis Shaley, Recreation Superintendent here. You had a question, and I may have an answer for that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The USD 305 has contacted me, and they have indicated they will not run the lunch program in this Celina Fieldhouse this summer.
I'm sorry, Travis, I just wanted to confirm, Commissioner Hodges here, I just wanted to confirm that you said USD 305 is not going to have their lunch program use the field house as a location this year?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hodges again, was that based on the assumption that we were going to close the field house, or are they just making adjustments to their program and the field house was no longer a location on their list?
I was contacted about a week ago whether we were having the summer camp or not, they indicated that they will not have the Salina Fieldhouse as a location.
I couldn't.
But was their decision based on our decision to not have the field house open, or that was a decision they had made independently of what we were doing with the field
Right.
house?
I believe it was their choice regardless. She did indicate it was not a lengthy decision. It was just a decision this year due to the COVID.
Commissioner Hodges, and we relied on USD 305 lunches to provide lunch for the children, is that correct?
Yes, they do provide lunch to kids plus our summer camp
Right.
during the lunch program.
Mayor Hopper, so I guess
Yeah.
what you're saying is if they don't have the lunch program there, we don't have a way to.
Right,
feed.
then it adds a whole new
No, we have to go get 'em and
issue-
bring 'em.
Brings the
dimension.
equation quite a bit in my
Right,
mind.
yeah, same.
That's good.
Unless their decision is not final, or it can be augmented.
Right, I certainly don't want to put it at their feet. I mean, presumably, we could, I don't know if Oakdale is where the meals come from, but, you know, if we're motivated, an arrangement could be made. Part of our thinking with Camp Celina is the individuals are typically in the building are the individuals we just committed to help with tournaments. And we're also trying to do them in a work share format. So we started spreading them out with a daily responsibility here and an evening responsibility of Bill Burke and a weekend responsibility at the tournaments. We've spread them too thin. That's not to say that we couldn't bring more staff back, but
Are
now
the,
your cost recovery is impacted.
Commissioner Davis, are the parents of these children generally able to pay for full fare day camp in the summer, or not? Hoping I'm asking that.
I mean, we have
sensitive way.
parents of all backgrounds that bring their children to the program. So without looking at the scholarship numbers, I couldn't give you that answer off the top of my head. But we do make accommodations for families that are in need.
All right, so we want to make sure that if we did not do this, that we weren't putting a disproportionate burden on
Right.
those who truly would have no other option for daycare or childcare during
Mayor
the summer.
Hoppick here, you say scholarship, where do those scholarship dollars come from, I guess would be a question.
We have funds that were donated to us
Okay,
a while
so-
back from Schwann's.
Okay, that's good to know. When you said scholarship, I didn't know if that was our dollars or some, so.
Commissioner Hodges here. I'm fine with the next item in our packet about closing the field house, but I just feel like maybe there's a couple of further questions or a little bit more information we could get about Camp Celina and its viability. And maybe I'm the only one up here that feels like that, but I would like to hear from USD 305 that, they decided independently that they were not going to use this location because, that makes the decision so much easier because then we'd be talking about establishing some kind of a food service.
Which would be,
we can't do that. But
Could we, Mayor Hoppick here, could we table this one? I guess it's not can we bring this one back next week?
that's what I'd like to see.
And just
yeah.
find out from USD 305. I think that would be it may make our decision real simple, but it'd be interesting to see if they, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
And how many families are on scholarship so that we kind of get a sense of
we're
where we're
helping.
placing
Yeah.
the burden, yeah.
Yeah. Those would be good.
And no, this one does not have a cost to the city, and we just heard that the cost is a negative number, which is actually good, but
Yeah, I think the one thing in that regard that one of the viability questions is that presumption that there's staff in the building that is not expensed to this program, and in our current staffing level, they wouldn't be in the building. So we're going to have to figure out operationally whether the doors are open, locked, how we're going to address that. But to say that it makes money while it's in a building that's being maintained and operated by other staff that aren't expensed to the camp.
And I don't care that it makes, our discussion is more not so much will it make money, but does it cost us money? I mean, if it's a wash and it's a good service, I mean, that's 75 kids a day who are going to have to find.
And Mayor Hoppick, it could be a safety and a service to the community too. So I would like to see the scholarship numbers too, and just kind of get an idea. So,
Commissioner Franz here. I am very loath to eliminate a program that involves childcare. That is something that is, near to my heart. But I don't think we have enough information here to make that decision comfortably. And if and the arrangement with USD 305 makes a lot of difference. If we have to do the meals on our own, that changes the equation substantially. And I think we just need, as well as trying to figure out, is there a way to do this without having a full-time building supervisor there? I think
it does sound like we'd have some cleanup. We'd have to hire somebody.
So
to do some
I think we just need a little more on that one to proceed with it.
And aside from the staffing per se, if we have to provide the lunches, if it means tuition goes up $2 or $3 a day, that's still easier for a parent than fixing a lunch and sending it.
That's one option, certainly.
Okay. Does that give you enough direction, Mike?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, that moves us to the Fieldhouse.
Yes, the Fieldhouse is also run mostly in the evenings with part-time staff. That is where Travis office out of. That is where the rest of our other programmers, other than one of them, they all also office out of there, and they run the front desk. We don't have an administrative assistant over there. So during our normal operating hours of the facility, all the staff that operates that building, with the exception of Travis, who just came back to work on Thursday, they're all furloughed. So that and the number of part-time staff, we decided that outside of staff recommendation to cancel for 2020, large tournaments, 30-plus teams allow the subject to state reopening plan, social distancing guideline, schedule availability, and staff approval, we could make that happen. But understand, the same people that are overseeing these tournaments that happen at the Fieldhouse are the same staff that would be overseeing baseball, softball. There are no more other people to do it. So that's one of the other factors we took into consideration.
And the intent with that schedule availability term wasn't so much whether there was another activity in the building, it was the schedule availability the support staff would have to support the tournament event. But there are some large basketball tournaments and volleyball tournaments that, from an economic development standpoint and an impact standpoint, we thought we could try to accommodate.
So this, Mayor Hoppick, this is keeping the Fieldhouse closed for the remainder of 2020, not just the summer, it's including fall and winter sports.
We'd have to look at.
It says cancel for 2020, but that's what I'm questioning. Is that for the full year, or are we just getting?
The only thing that might change that is if the staff in question get to their break-even point and come back on a full schedule before year end, we might be able to accommodate it sooner.
What other options are there in Celina for volleyball, basketball? Our youth have been in school for the last month or so. It's all new. The excitement is still there. But pretty soon we're going to have about, I'm guessing, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 kids under age 18 here. They're going to have something to do. Now, all of them can't go down to the Fieldhouse at one time, but either we're going to have recreation in lots of little small areas all around town, or which we may need anyway, but it's sounding a little bleak from the social aspect of the pandemic. I understand the economic part and the health part, but and again, if the health part's not flying, none of this matters anyway. But I think we're going to have to have some options.
Mike Scragg, if the question is on opportunities for sports that is not organized, then I would say all the parks that we have, whether it's basketball, tennis, volleyball, whatever the case may be. If the expectation is organized sports, the basketball tournaments are held in school gyms and along with the Fieldhouse, that type of thing. I don't know what the school's availability of their facilities will be.
So I would think during the summer that that's their chance to save a little bit of money and keep theirs shuttered.
Currently, they'll have tournaments, and some of the tournaments will use, all the facilities. Travis, are you on the line? Can you speak to, past examples of tournaments that use our facility and school facilities or other venues?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, Travis Shaley, Recreation Superintendent. The first one that comes to my mind, especially during the summer, is Tom Haynes does have a MAYB tournament. He utilizes the Fieldhouse for the main base, I guess you would say. Utilizes all 6 courts there, and then does utilize South Middle, South High, for example. There's several other MAYB tournaments that do the same, but those are more in the picture. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, do you happen to know if the schools will be available this summer?
As far as I know, all school facilities are closed until May 31st. That's the date that I can recall. Summer activities are put on hold as far as I'm aware.
I think that's a Keisha Health directive. I know they're talking about what the timeline looks like to resume practice and organized activities, but I don't know what the date is.
I guess of all sports, basketball is probably about the least likely to ever meet any social distancing requirement. But, you can control spectators and stuff. But, again, and that's where the health advisories would take precedence.
Travis, Mayor Hoppick, are you currently taking reservations for tournaments for the fall and winter of 2020?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Travis Shaley, Recreation Superintendent. I do have some tournaments tentatively scheduled as of right now.
Okay.
But we are not taking additional reservations at this point until we receive further guidance.
Mayor Hoppick, one more question, Travis. I know there's quite a few teams or individuals that reserve and use the facility for practices during the fall and winter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do we have a dollar number as far as what we generate and what that would cost us to staff that in the evenings for individuals to be able to use the field house?
I do have some numbers month to month that we revenue do generate throughout the year. Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is if we opened the facility up in the evenings during the fall and the winter months of 2020, is there a scenario where we could at least break even on that and use that as a service to the community? And then do you also run leagues in the evening?
2019, starting in the fall, we do generate 65% cost recovery, and then as we approach winter, it does increase.
Okay.
So the financial forecasting that we've done so far assumes no fee revenue on
Right.
rec programs in general, and then assumes no part-time
expense,
staffing. So
right.
the gap that we projected and tried to close assumed no fee revenue.
So we don't charge for these programs?
Yes.
Yes.
You
But
just said no fee revenue.
no, our 2020 revenue forecast with the adjusted staffing.
Commissioner Franz, by the way, my question is, what's the cost recovery on these Fieldhouse programs we're talking about?
That's what I would like to know.
I'd like to point out a little inconsistency, and it disturbs me, is we approved a baseball program at a cost of $75,000 with 1,700 participants, and we're looking at 2,500 participants at an unknown cost, and we're talking about not doing it. It seems to be consistent. We ought to do both, but that runs counter to our entire cost savings plan, which is predicated on eliminating these temporary seasonal people that we need to do these programs.
Mike Scragg.
This is creep. I mean, it's one thing to do what we did a couple of weeks ago and say we've got to eliminate temporary seasonal, but when folks wake up and when we start seeing what programs are impacted, we're all saying, oh, we don't really want to do that. And at some point, we're going to have to bite the bullet and we're going to have to do it.
Well, that's, yeah, I think we need more information on the Fieldhouse because I can't look at this and tell whether we're losing money, making money, or what that financial, it's kind of like, what financial impact do we have to not open it or what programs?
There's not enough information there to make the decision. I would agree.
Mike Scragg, a couple things, I understand your point. I tried to provide some background of the creep that we've done so far was on the basis of economic development, overnight stay.
This says that it's a $2.1 million impact on this sheet, the Fieldhouse.
But we are opening it for weekend tournaments.
Well,
right. So
I don't know what that 2.1 million means in this context.
And I don't know that I can speak to the 2.1 million, but we were, again, trying to accommodate tournaments as an economic development generator.
Well, the 2.1 is for 2019. I just realized that myself. Yeah.
Right. Yes, Travis?
Yes. The $2.1 million is an economic report provided by Visit Salina from 2018, not 19. 19, they were finishing up, and then Kyle Weiser was furloughed. So I do not have the updated 2019 yet. So the 2.1 million is based on 2018 economical impact of just Salina Fieldhouse tournament only.
Travis, Mayor Hoppick, based on the activity we saw in 19 versus 18, would you consider that number to be higher or lower?
In general, I saw about a 10 to 15% increase.
Am I, Mayor Hoppick here, I guess what I'm hearing from at least Commissioner Franz, and I need some other commissioners, and I agree with him somewhat, I think we need some more details on this in order to make a completely educated discussion or decision on this.
I would agree with that. Okay. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, Commissioner Hodges, maybe both of these could come back to us.
Yeah, Camp Celina and Fieldhouse. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Next item is the golf course.
I'm sorry. Apologize, Commissioner Davis. Is next week the Monday we don't have no, we have a meeting next Monday, right? Yeah, okay. If we decided to continue Camp Celina, would May 26th still be the start date, or would you necessarily have to push it back a couple of weeks?
We'd have to push it back. We have no staff hired for this at all.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
And I'm not sure it would meet the governor's guidelines at that point.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we have June, the 90 is what, June 1?
Yeah.
If it doesn't get moved back.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, golf course enterprise fund.
Okay, I'm going to try to start this, and I'll need Chris's help. So we closed the golf course as part of the stay-at-home order, and we've tried to look at what the staffing implications might be. And it is very part-time intensive, both in terms of mowing and maintenance, as well as staffing the clubhouse. Mike Hargrave, the course superintendent, and Mark Lytle, who does maintenance, work very hard at trying to come up with an alternate approach to try to make it work somehow. And I know, we frequently hear that the golf course makes money. It struggles to make money at best, and the accounting doesn't take into account all the expenses associated with operation of the golf course, capital items, that type of thing. The irrigation system being the most recent example. So the table that's provided on the right-hand side of slide 48 is intended to provide an inventory of tasks, how frequently they're done under normal operation, a proposed modified approach that Mike Hargrave and Mark Lytle came up with, and then I also asked them to identify what would be needed if we just closed the course, on the assumption that the course was closed for 2020, but maintained such that it could be reopened in 2021. And so I guess the point is there's some added, there's an incremental difference between if we closed the course the remainder of the year and if we did some type of modified schedule as they've proposed. And so you can see typically we've got about 569 hours a week invested. They think they can get by on 150 hours a week in a modified approach. And in a course closure, they still think it'd take them about 104 hours a week. So one of the calculations we did was just said, okay, how many greens fees would be needed to cover that cost difference? And I think that's later in the slides, but it seems plausible that we could get that number of greens fees on a weekly basis. So slide 49 summarizes the operational changes in the mowing schedule, pulling back quite a bit on the pesticide application, the approach to irrigation, trash collection, all the items listed there, trying to give you a sense of, again, what that revised, reduced service level would look like. The roughs would certainly be rough, and maintenance would be minimal. Then on slide 50 is their proposed hours of operation and schedule. And so this is definitely a modified approach to operations, with Monday being closed, and then later start times in the mornings and then going into the evenings. We talked about, in the heat of the summer, it may have to be a split schedule where people want to golf when it's cool and don't want to golf in the heat of the day and then pick it up again in the evening. But they've come up with this shared approach. And you'll notice the part-time pro shop staff persons also assume that they're going to be doing maintenance, literally mowing, part of their time as well, and then bringing on that part-time staff. So there's essentially 4 part-time staff that would be added in this approach. In the bottom left-hand corner of slide 50 is our cost calculation of the weekly staffing cost, the cart fuel cost. Utilities are unknown depending on utilization and usage, and then the rounds needed to cover on just a $22 a round greens fee, or a typical $37.50 for greens fee and cart. So somewhere between 36 to 62 rounds we believe would cover that added cost. And I would tell you that...
Is that per day or per week?
Per week.
Per week, okay.
And I would tell you that I appreciate the staff's commitment, and they certainly have done their homework, and they are very convinced that they've come up with a way to make this work. When we talk about adaptations and challenges arising and things having to change, this is aggressive, in my opinion, in terms of their effort to make it work. But from a cost recovery standpoint, we're trying to identify that incremental cost difference to do this, compared to, we can't just completely walk away from the golf course unless we're truly prepared to walk away from it long term. We still have some base maintenance that we'd have to perform whether we're getting any greens fees at all. So this number is trying to kind of isolate that incremental difference. Again, it's less than ideal. I think people golfers will appreciate the course is open, but as we go through the season, I think the message is going to be very critical that they understand it's a modified approach because of the financial impacts of the pandemic. And I am getting a lot of feedback that there's just a presumption that it's a profit center, and so they don't understand why we can't just open it up as is. But combine how tenuous it is in breaking even with all the impact, the uncertainty in terms of discretionary incomes and unemployment and social patterns, I'm less optimistic than ever that it would break even this year.
Commissioner, that was the question I was going to ask, and I don't know how you'd even do this, but are there any projections on how many rounds you're going to lose because of the pandemic?
Mike's on the phone. Mike Hargrave's there.
Is he on the same phone as Travis?
He is.
Okay, it's unmuted. So I'm not aware of anything other than just kind of our hazarding a guess. But we are aware that some people have gone to the country club or Great Life as an alternative, and some of those have indicated they're purchasing memberships there. But how to quantify that, I don't know. Mike, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Anything you want to add?
This is Mike Hargrave, the manager of the Municipal Golf Course. As far as rounds in our region, we use a service called Golf Data, and for the state of Kansas overall, rounds are up 44% over the same time last year. For the year, they're up 42%. In our region, which is basically us to Missouri and up through the Dakotas and Minnesota, rounds are up 37%. So we have spoken with other area golf courses that have already been opened, and all of their rounds are up. So, and I realize people are off work, people are needing things to do, and so they're spending time at the golf course, obviously. With it being an exemption under the governor's order, it's one of the alternative lifestyles, exercises that you can do out there where social distancing can be easily employed. So we see it as, a very positive thing for our golfers. We wish we had been participating already, but we feel like we can more than cover our expenses with the revenue and rounds that we will get being open.
Mike, Mayor Hoppick here. Hey, I have a quick question. I believe you sell memberships out there.
Yeah.
How many of those have already been sold? And if we were to cancel the 2020 season, how many dollars would we be looking at refunding?
Well, right now we currently have about 262 memberships of varying levels. Normally we would have well over 300 by this time. A lot of those would be league memberships, people who purchase those type of memberships to play in men's league. On average, from now to probably the end of the year, for 2019, we averaged, I want to say, close to $12,000 a month in membership sales, whether that's customers paying their monthly fees for those memberships, or some customers renew at that time. But that is an average. I believe I provided some of those numbers to Debbie as well and Chris. But the other thing to keep the golf course closed would probably we would begin to have to pay back memberships that have been paid, and so we would be refunding a large number of those membership fees if we don't get the doors open.
Mike, Mayor Hoppick again. Do you have, I know usually there's some golf tournaments that are held out there, whether they're the youth tournaments or whatever that bring people into the community. Do you have a list of those or that would be an economic driver to the community?
We do have a number of tournaments. We host a number of youth tournaments throughout the summer. This summer in particular, we're hosting the state junior boys amateur championship, which will bring between 100 and 150 young men to Salina for 4 days, plus their families. So that is a fair impact for our community, as well as golf course.
Mike, what are the dates on that? Just
That is June 15th is the first day. That's the practice round. That's a Monday.
okay.
And then 3 tournament rounds with cuts after 2 days, and the final round being on Thursday. And we have many families. We've hosted it in the past, and we have many families and players come in that weekend before just to get into extra practice rounds. But there's that, numerous charity events that our golf courses that bring teams from outside our community. It's also, I think, important to note that I've only had one tournament cancel, that was Ambucks, and all the rest of our tournaments that are on our schedule have requested to push back their dates because they still want to host their event at the
Commissioner Davis, a question. How long, if you were to open under, and I'll just say under this modified maintenance schedule, how long would it take you to tell if it's working or not financially?
I would like to say that after probably 2-4 weeks, we should have a very good idea of what the revenue is going to be. I think also to go along with that, I realize we have felt a lot of frustration from our patrons, our customers, and we're hoping that this is not any kind of a pushback to punish us, so to speak. But most people I have spoken to have responded positively that we just get the doors open, that they will be coming back to play the community.
So you would only lose money if people had to go back to work then?
I'm sorry?
It sounds like you might have less income if people have to go back to work, which would be a good problem to have. Yeah.
One of the reasons we had already been we're just hoping that we can get to that point so that we can bring in the revenue to make it work.
Mike, Mayor Hoppick here, and only because I am a senior, I know on Thursday mornings they have senior league that usually starts early. I notice your start time for the course is not till 10. Is that an issue?
That was on, I think, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, perhaps Thursdays. Again, being able to, split up our shifts if need be. When we get to the time of the summer where the governor allows larger groups to gather, we were going to bring that back to city administrators to see if we could modify that schedule so that we can accommodate our teams. I know they are very anxious to get back to playing.
Yep. Other questions for staff? Anyone? Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments, questions before we open up the phones?
I would like to mention that the hiring of the 4 part-time employees, our current field maintenance staff that takes care of the ball fields, and one of our recreation supervisors are currently doing maintenance at the course. So that's why this has been brought back into the mix to an extent. Just want to make that clear. We hadn't talked about that.
So that would free up.
That would send our staff back to be able to take care of the ball fields for baseball, softball, some of the ones that are still working.
So it'd be good for the ball fields.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that reminds me too, I think this is the only example of where we're proposing hiring part-time staff while we have the staff on furlough or work share. But given this format in terms of cost and it being an enterprise fund and trying to free up the staff, as Mr. Cotton said, that's kind of what we came up with, was to bring some part-time staff on board for the golf course, which is the typical way that they do it, recognizing that we have other employees on work share and furlough.
Mayor Hoppick here. I know they also have the first tee out there that's pretty active with youth, so I don't know how that's separate. That's a separate funding source, though, isn't it?
They're an employee of ours, and the first tee reimburses us. We've been in conversation with them and really need to figure out what our scheduling and offerings is going to be at the golf course, and then we can figure out how to supplement that with first tee programming.
I know that's been a pretty popular program for years.
Are any of our furloughed employees trained to do any of the work at the golf course? Or do they have a skill set that would transfer? Probably a better way to ask.
Well, I mean, grounds maintenance. I mean, that's what they do, and they'll just go back to doing the same grounds maintenance at the baseball, softball fields.
I think his question was the other way around. Do we have city employees that could be used instead of the part-time employees?
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have
It
put
could
that
be
little
brought back
phrase
from-
in. Yeah.
The staff that's furloughed right now are full-time recreation staff, and so all of those staff, if they came back they would be doing the baseball, softball. So all the furloughed staff, they currently are recreation supervisors who oversee those fields anyway, so they would be doing that work. So to answer your question, we wouldn't have any recreation staff available to go over there and help. The Mark Lotto could train them, but they're going to be used to run baseball, softball.
And then I would add, too, that this assumes a nominal rate and no benefits. If we reallocate city staff over there, all of these numbers change.
Okay.
Commissioner Franz, I would, are we able to monitor the rounds closely enough on a weekly basis to see if we may be coming close to the projected number to be a break-even circumstance? I think that's pretty important to do, and just make sure that we don't get thrown into a loss situation.
I'm very confident in Mike Hargrave's ability to monitor those rounds. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I know that the same as any year, we can't predict November and December. And I recall times in the past when those months have been terrible and we just lose money at the course in that
Mayor Hoppick here,
circumstance.
I would guess that some of that part-time staff would be reduced as we get into October, November, December. I guess as I look at this and I figure, as I was doing some calculating here of the number of rounds, and that's only 62 additional rounds a week, which is 10 a day, which is minimal.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you, and plus if we don't open, we're going to have to refund memberships, which is going to put us behind the eight ball. I guarantee you 100% if we don't open, we lose money. Because we're paying no money.
I don't disagree with that.
But if we open, at least we have the potential to make money.
Yeah.
And plus, again, we get back to that quality of life. I know there's just individuals that are flaunching the bid, and there's individuals that now, because of pricing, you have great life in the club that you may lose, and it's going to hurt revenues not only this year, but for years to come. And I believe that maybe happened to us back in, when was it we did the spike in the rates back, was that 08, 09?
Yeah, we did have memberships that
we lost
shifted to
members
Great Life. And typically the next year they were back.
But we had a
lull
drop,
yeah.
and I can see that happening again also.
So with respect to rounds and kind of monitoring performance, as I mentioned earlier, my bigger concern is whether we can maintain this staffing schedule and meet expectations. I mean, Mike just acknowledged they already have intent of asking for more scheduling. So I think even if we meet the rounds, I'm concerned that we're going to have to continue to stay on top of the schedule and the maintenance expense.
Or if the rounds are considerably more than what is projected there, then as long as we can break even, I don't have an issue.
The difficulty we have is the work share program creates a benefit for the employee. And so if you've got an employee expecting a 32-hour work share and you work them 40, not only have you've covered their wages, but now you have that whole federal pandemic unemployment compensation. So it's not just our expenses and revenue we're messing with, it's our employees at that point.
But Mayor Hoppick here, but I know before they've always hired outside part-time people to mow that are ex-teachers or coaches or something. So I think there's individuals out there that...
I'm actually worried about Mike and Mark and our full-time staff that have committed to this plan that it's just very well-intentioned and aggressive on their part.
Mayor Hoppick, to your statement, usually Mark Lidle has between 10 and 12 part-time people working for him. So this assumes hiring 4. I do know, I do believe they had 2 part-timers that were already hired, already working at the course when the pandemic came and we sent them home. So he does have some staff ready to go. But to answer your question, usually he has, yes, a 10 to 12 people part-time, for teachers, et cetera, that do work for him, and they're ready to go.
Commissioner Hodges, how does the hiring of part-time workers impact our participation in the shared work program?
I don't believe that it does. With this being an enterprise fund and we're still cutting back other hours, I can verify that, but I don't have any reason to think it.
I just didn't want to get us into a position where we were furloughing and doing work reductions and being very careful to stay within the state's guidelines, and then we add, several part-time employees, without benefits and everything that, I don't know. I suppose if you look at it a certain way, it could be like circumventing the rules, and I think it speaks to something Commissioner Davis said before. If, some of the furloughed employees, if they had the right skill set, could they be brought back to work in this capacity and then thus become part of the shared work program?
That's a good point. I'll check.
Commissioner Franz, is the golf course a part of a shared work unit?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have furloughed golf course employees?
We have work share. We're calling furloughed not working at all, but we have work share.
You do have a work share, but that would continue.
Yeah.
That includes guys that are there now. That would continue. So we're actually hiring back a different sort of employee.
Yeah, but I understand Commissioner Hodges' point.
It's a potential.
Yeah.
Hey, do we have anyone on the phone that has their hand raised?
If anybody wishes to speak, they need to press *9. Don't think so.
Thought maybe the guy I cut off earlier might call back. That was my bad. I should have reminded him. I felt bad after I did it. But
I think they fell off the ship at about 7:30.
Might be in bed by now, huh? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
We didn't provide you a recommendation in the form of a motion you could read.
Staff is recommending the modified schedule?
Correct. Yeah, we're recommending the modified schedule and modified maintenance approach.
And Commissioner Ryan here, I would make that motion. We accept that staff's recommendation for the modified schedules.
Commissioner Davis, second.
Commissioner Hodges, and that does include the presumption that we are going to liaison with the state.
Correct.
Liaise with the state.
It takes a little bit, but time-wise, but yes, we will.
Okay, Mayor Hoppick here. We have a motion and a second to approve the modified schedule for the Salina Municipal Golf Course. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay. Special events. Chris, you're still up, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Special events, Play Day in the Park, which is one of our biggest events in the summer. That's a total participant of 3,000. There is no cost recovery to that event. The staff that oversee that event, they are on furlough. That's a $13,800 cost to the city. The Touch a Truck event, technically that would have already occurred, but it has 1,000 participants, a cost of $2,700. Again, no staff to oversee it, so we are recommending canceling these two events for 2020.
Comments or questions? Okay. Anyone on the phone there, Mike? Gotta ask.
Eric, if you want to speak, press *9. That's all what we're down to.
That's what we're down to?
Yep.
Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor Hoppick, I move we accept the staff's recommendation as to special events, cancel for 2020.
Commissioner Hodges, second.
We have a motion, a second, to cancel the special events for 2020. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That also passes 5-0. Summer recreation programs.
Okay. Not to sound like a broken record, but once again, the staff member that oversees all of these programs is furloughed. They also utilize a lot of contract employees and part-time employees to oversee these programs. So we technically have no employees to run these programs. So staff recommendation for these classes is to cancel them for the summer of 2020.
Commissioner Ryan here, are those numbers over to the right column on 52, is that the numbers of participants in the different programs?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Those would be the numbers for the entire June, July, 3 months?
Yes, sir. June 1st to August 31st, those are the participation numbers, yes, sir.
All right, so on any average day during those 3 months, there were 55
people in the baseball camp.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'd go, as Commissioner Davis, if we looked at outsourcing any of these to any of our
We have not.
private organizations in town, churches, volunteers?
We have not this time. Outside of, we were contacted about the tennis camp from Genesis about moving that to their indoor facility as opposed to out in the park. But other than that, we have not reached out to anybody else, no, sir.
I'm assuming there's fees for all of these.
Yes, sir.
And I guess if anyone wanted to take over any of these, assuming health and social distancing would allow, they would find out quickly the price point for their offering to, take the service. I'd just like to see an opportunity for see if there's any interest in the community for picking some of these up.
Mayor Hoppick here. I would think that, I don't know how ours are, like baseball camps and softball camps tie in, but I know there's individuals that do those once in a while, just from having past experience with that. So this is an opportunity for someone to step up that wants to do that, I guess. So, but I know there are some out there.
I remember like Heart of America for
Basketball and volleyball, they do, yeah.
One thing I would like to throw out on that is that, we do run background checks on everybody that does this for us. I just want to be clear that before we just turn it over to somebody, that we understand that we do the background checks on people working with these children. So I just want to throw that
Mayor
out.
Hoppick here. I'm not saying we turn it over to somebody. I'm just saying it gives the opportunity for somebody else to do it if they see there's
Yes,
a
sir.
gap. So, yeah, I'm not saying.
or to announce, to those well-intentioned folks in our community, this is an opportunity if you want to have a program over the summer. The participants may be available. And the only reason we're not doing this is because of the staff, not because. Do these break even?
Some of them do, some of them don't.
As an aggregate?
No.
Is it losing a lot? I mean, is it a big loss leader or just kind of close?
Baseball camp does pretty well. Adult dance does not break even. Youth dance does not break even. Karate does not break even. Volleyball camp's close. Tennis camp's close. Softball camp's close. Smart Start baseball and soccer are for toddlers. They're very nominal. I can't speak for cheerleading, baton, and babysitting at this time, but I can look into those numbers.
I'm just curious. It's a babysitting class?
Yes, sir.
I've looked at this list like 4 times, and it just now hit me that babysitting was on there. Okay, it's a new one. Okay.
Anyone on the phone, Mike, or we still just have Eric hanging around?
Just have Eric.
I think he just forgot to hang up the phone.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Hoppick, Commissioner Hodges here.
Eric just, I think he has a witty retort, maybe. Eric, you wanted to speak?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I am still around. So thank you for what you're doing. The one question I did have was around the arts program at the Salina Arts Center, if that is a program that is self-funded or breaks even.
Yeah, we do not run the art program. We give a monetary donation to them for the year. We don't run that program ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hodges, what's our commitment to the arts program?
I believe it's $10,000.
I was just looking up this, Commissioner Davis, on page 53, actually. The question I just asked you about which programs did cover them. So some of these, you've noted that the fees cover the payroll costs. I don't know what equipment and property costs would have to come up with. Are any of these salvageable if the fees cover the cost of those part-time employees? Again, it's a lot of kids. I'm not going to say they have nothing to do, but it's a lot of programming, and it looks like all of these would satisfy the requirements for the mass gathering and social distancing as possible. But if there's a program in which the payroll costs are covered by the fees and the equipment is nominal, I'd like to see if we can salvage some of these.
Some of them that probably perform the best, baseball and volleyball and tennis, all depend on facility maintenance, which we're also cutting back on. So we start to try to balance that interrelationship of the facilities operation and maintenance.
Are these facilities we're going to have to maintain even to a lesser degree than usual for the other baseball activities?
Baseball maybe, tennis and volleyball not so much.
Where was tennis being held?
Oakdale Park before.
Of course, volleyball, we don't have
The Fieldhouse.
Fieldhouse open.
Right.
Mayor Hoppick here. So are the individuals that run those are furloughed currently? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
or
most of these classes are run with part-time staff.
right. So we'd have to. So you'd just be hiring somebody back to run one program, and is it a week-long program, a 2-day program?
Most of them are sessions. So several weeks. But also the person that coordinates the program, they are on furlough.
They are on furlough, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, would this be the same? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Commissioner, would that be the same person who would have to coordinate? And I forget which program that I wanted to. have coordinated?
Salina?
Camp Salina.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Because I noticed some of the, even the ones where you have the pros and cons, some of the cons are low participation, but even for those, the fees cover the payroll costs.
Of that part-time instructor.
Right.
Yes, sir.
But if we have, I mean, if this one supervising person is now covering, 12 programs instead of just one, the relative cost of having the supervisor on any one program goes down. Because we've been cutting programs that don't cover their costs, and it looks like some of these are coming pretty close.
So the person that, there's one person that has the relationships with except for baseball camp. This one supervisor oversees adult dance, youth dance, karate, tennis, smart start, b-ball and soccer, cheerleading, baton, and babysitting.
Well, that's a lot to cut. Particularly if the program, other than the supervisor, was paying for it. So I guess I'd have to ask, is it reasonable to not have the one person who supervises all of the summer programming not working? I mean, it's.
And I'll just go a little bit further. Like the volleyball camp, for example, the person that supervises that would be on the baseball, softball field maintenance crew, so she wouldn't be available to run the volleyball camp. And the baseball camp is overseen by Travis, and he'll be running all the other. I mean, we might be able to make that happen, but some of this other stuff that requires the people that have a background in those classes, they'll be tied up with baseball, softball.
Kind of goes back to my prior point that as we're trying to get this mowing schedule implemented, we're having to spread our staff very thin. And so the two individuals that Chris just mentioned, instead of supervising, are going to be doing physical maintenance and mowing.
So for the cost of 2 even part-time mowers, we could open up 12 other programs.
Well,
I mean,
sure.
it's-
From a budget standpoint, this is that global financial decision that we're trying to make. We as much as you're willing to spend, we can bring back is
Well, and it may mean increasing fees. I mean, that's, that should not be off the table. But I don't want these kids ending up in the police department either because there's nothing to do. Or they have too much free time on their hands.
Commissioner Hodges, that makes sense, and I think maybe, not having your staffing chart and knowing that it's really complex, but when Commissioner Davis said, if we're looking at bringing someone back from furlough to supervise the Camp Celina program, and that person could also do all of these programs, I mean, that's where you were going with that, right?
Yes.
Okay, I understand that. I think that that throws another wrinkle into it. I mean,
Or even to let it simmer for a week and think about it again.
Yeah, I
But
think
it's
we're
just-
I think we're getting a little complicated here, trying to juggle what staff has done with all their personnel. I guess if you want to wait till next week to see what information we get on Camp Salina, but other than that, I just think there's too many moving parts on this camp that I would probably just.
Let me, if I could, one other, is it, I'm assuming, relatively infrequent that you'd have one child in more than one of these camps at the same time? Or,
Not necessarily.
okay, so even if, let's say, 15% were overlapping, I'm trying to add these numbers up real quick, and that's about 200, 300, 400, that's about 500 kids who were taken out of camp for the summer. And even if 15% overlap, then that's still, help me out somebody, about 400 420 of them, who we're dumping. And again, it doesn't have to be free. But if I'm a parent who's working and I can have my kid in camp 6 hours a day, I can work 6 hours a day. Otherwise, now I have to find daycare. I'm just, school has occupied a lot of our kids right now. I'm guessing.
Mayor Hoppe here, I don't think these are 6-hour camps. These are more like a couple hours, aren't they usually?
Yeah, these aren't all day
Yeah,
activities.
these are like a couple hours in the morning or something, usually.
Or 3 hours here, 3 hours at grandma or someplace. But I mean, I understand the cost and the budgetary requirement. It's at what cost? What's the non-dollar cost that we're going to have without these programs? Just throwing it out, food for thought.
Commissioner Franz here, and I'm going to express a little frustration. I think we're getting into micromanaging the program a bit much. And that being said, I would make the motion that we accept the staff recommendation and cancel the programs for 2020.
I second the motion. This is Commissioner Ryan.
I don't know if we're micromanaging the program. We were asked for direction as to whether or not the program should be continued.
And
now,
I just made a motion to provide that direction.
Right. Well, the micromanaging would be if we told them how to manipulate their staff to end up with a supervisor. But if it was a high enough priority that we wanted the program, then we lead up to their expertise to figure out how to pull it off. That's where I think the micromanaging would be.
I respectfully disagree.
We have a motion and a second to go with staff's recommendation to cancel the summer recreation programs for 2020. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that's 3-2. Okay, summer senior programs.
Yes. The main summer senior programs are water exercise, Tai Chi, the senior games, and trips and tours. Water exercise, we do have the ability to meet the mass gathering criteria. Social distancing is possible. There's no economic impact. There's no hotel stays. This is not run in our facility. It's run at Eagle Crest. We would need to meet with them to see if they're willing to let us have the program there, first of all. But again, that comes back to part-time staff that teaches that position or teaches that activity. Tai Chi is also a part-time staff member. The senior games, that is overseen by our full-time staff member that's on furlough. Trips and tours depends on the trip. We actually did combine that program with our Therapeutic Recreation program for trips to help reduce our costs on that. But again, that's overseen by a staff member that's on furlough. So staff recommendation is to cancel the rest of the senior programs for 2020. Do want to be clear that we anticipate there's a very vocal group that will express their displeasure with the trips and tours. And we could recommend for the water aerobics class, we could refer them to the YMCA.
Questions or comments for staff?
Commissioner Ryan here, where do trips and tours go?
Usually they're day trips. Sometimes they've gone to the Royals game, or they've gone in the winter. They've gone down to Wichita for a hockey game, or to various museums or other activities. Just day trips.
Again, that's another event, unless the city's heavily subsidizing it. The city doesn't have. Anyone can organize. Well, the
Yes, sir.
advertisements in the paper every Sunday for trips. And that's where I think that, just like a lot of the other programs that we're not going to have, we need to advertise to our community that we're not providing any services, and that those organizations that could pick some of these programs up contact us or start their own advertising so that we can keep these younger people engaged.
Okay, any questions? Anyone on the phone? Eric doesn't fall into the senior category, so I don't know if he'll say.
We're down to staff now.
Down to staff, okay. Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Commissioner Hodges, I would move that we cancel the summer senior programs for 2020.
Commissioner Ryan, second.
We have a motion, a second, to cancel the summer senior programs for 2020. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Okay, Lakewood Nature Programs.
Yes, the last program that we'd like to discuss are the programs that go over at Lakewood. Lakewood has exactly one full-time staff member, and he is currently on the mowing crew. He does have, I believe, two part-time staff members that work with him that also help teach the programs, but this ties back to no seasonal staff. So staff recommends canceling the Lakewood Nature Programs for 2020.
Commissioner Date, were these programs covering themselves as far as fees?
These programs, for the most part, did cover their fees for the classes themselves, because we use mostly part-time staff. Brian, the supervisor out there does teach some of them. They do not begin to address the facility costs out there, though, for the Nature Center.
Just a rough idea of what that is?
I believe that the actual overall cost recovery for everything with the facility is between 10 and 15%, although in the individual programs themselves are around 95 to 100%.
So when you say that, that means the fees covered the...
Just the program and the part-time staff only, yes, sir.
So what was the 10 to 15%?
That's the overall operation of the facility and utilizing the building itself, Lakewood Nature Center.
Okay, so so those expenses, so it's like basically paying rent?
You could look at it that way, sir, yes.
Commissioner Hodges, I guess I'm just having a hard time with, if something is covering its cost, just eliminating it. I mean, I know we had the discussion, and I agreed that we, to eliminate part-time staff. But if it's a break-even proposition, I'm kind of failing to see what benefit, financial or socially, that we're getting out of it by canceling.
I think the biggest impact is what's needed to maintain the turf and the grass at Lakewood Park itself. The staff person in the mowing schedule and the staffing schedule is dedicated to mowing, where we would have to backfill that as well.
Generally, in the park department has 10 part-time staff to mow and four people to run the trim crew. That's 3 and a supervisor. So none of those positions have been filled. So we've had to ask the supervisor at Lakewood to step up. So he's not available to run the programs, oversee them.
So is that facility being shuttered for the summer?
Technically, yes, sir.
So nobody's using it for anything?
Lakewood, no, sir. The Audubon has space in there we let the Audubon Society uses one of the offices, but we wouldn't be running any programs or classes out there. No, sir.
Commissioner Franz here, just to clarify, you had said that these programs covered the cost of the part-time person that was hired to run each of the programs, but I took it from that it does not cover the cost of the full-time person who manages the entire center and who's now been assigned to mowing.
That's true.
Okay.
And Commissioner Dick, be kind of hard to put these in a church parish hall, considering what they are. Probably don't want archery indoors. These programs would be a little harder to relocate to another organization that didn't have the same facility. But I'm beginning to think that grass 18 inches high would be better than having all this programming eliminated.
These are not
no easy
enjoyable
answers.
choices.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
Tall grass is beginning to not be as objectionable as it was 3 hours ago.
But I guarantee we will have tall grass in the current model. It's I don't even know how many acres of maintenance to eating our lunch.
The grass at some areas of the parks is already over 18 inches, so we're trying desperately to get to it.
We just reclassify them as nature preserves.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mayor Hoppick here, as we talked about, it seemed like it's been months ago. We know there's tough decisions to be made and not easy decisions, but I think hopefully next year will be back to more of some type of normal. But right now I know staff's done what they can to try to balance the budget and but it is hard to look at, and I guess until now I don't think some of us even knew how many programs we really had out there.
Right.
To be honest with you.
Commissioner Davis, how much does it cost us to keep Lakewood shuttered over the summer? How much maintenance and upkeep the building still has to be done? A lot of buildings aren't that much cheaper empty than they are when they're being used.
I don't have that cost off the top of my head, but I can absolutely find that out.
Okay.
Anybody on the line?
no,
I would like to say that this does, this is what we do, is recreation programming. So this is extremely difficult to sit here and recommend basically closing all of our recreation programs for the community. It was not easy. It's not easy, but it's necessary right now, for the most part, for us to stay financially whole.
Okay, bring it back to the commission. Since we have no on the phone, any comments from any of the other commissioners?
Yeah, I love baseball, but $75,000 would keep a lot of these programs open.
Commissioner Franz, if I might interject a comment here, I recognize what Mr. Cotton said about this not being easy, and it's not easy for me either. And maybe it's because my perspective going in was I had some concept of how many programs and how many people this would affect. And if you look back at one of my earlier comments as we started the discussion of the financial changes we would have to make, I tried to make it very clear that this was going to be painful. And it is, and it's very difficult to do. So I just, and that being said, I'll make the motion that we accept the staff recommendation on Lakewood Nature Center for 2020.
Commissioner Ryan, I'll second.
Mayor Hoppick here, we have a motion to accept staff recommendation for Lakewood Nature Center to cancel those programs for 2020. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
4-1. Okay, parks facilities.
We would like to, yes, we'd like to propose opening the playgrounds, the basketball courts, picnic tables and shelters, Carver and Friendship Center, splash pads, and the park and downtown bathrooms the week of June 15th. We'd like to propose keeping the sunset ponds and waterfalls closed until 2021. That is labor intensive to keep them clean. And then we would like to open the Barkley Dog Park back up on June 1st. Subject to reopening plan and health indicators.
Commissioner Hodges, I've already fielded one inquiry from a citizen about the Sunset Park ponds because there's stagnant water and there's leaves, and what's our plan to mitigate for mosquitoes and stuff as those ponds collect water and debris?
We have reached out to Martha to utilize some of her crew to help us get them cleaned out based on staffing availability. I do know that 2 of the ponds are still able to have the drains open so that they can slowly drain. One of them would have to continually be cleaned out, I believe. But that is our plan, to try to keep them clean and maintained. Again, no part-time staff, limited 32 hours right now, and trying to mow. We'll do our best to clean them out on a regular basis, but it will be difficult.
So the utilities department has vacuum suction trucks that can get in there and suck the water and leaves out. So when he refers to Martha, he's talking about the utilities director that could assist with equipment.
Commissioner Hodges, I'm just saying that vacuuming the ponds after every rainfall seems like a pretty labor-intensive proposition as well. I understand it might not happen that often, but that's just, I mean, I think we're just creating another issue. I mean, if that's the plan, I'm not understanding. I mean, I understand that the ponds and the waterfalls are expensive to maintain, and I don't disagree with the decision to mothball them, but there's got to be a better plan than, as we're able, we may vacuum them out if the drains are clogged. I mean, because you're asking everybody around that park then to put up with basically a mosquito breeding ground. I mean,
Right.
I get that we can't, aesthetics are off the table this year. I get that, and I understand that, but at the same time, I mean, I hope we really have a plan in place to keep it cleaned up, because not doing anything isn't an option.
Commissioner Davis, and that becomes a problem towards the end of the summer, early fall, when you start getting into encephalitis-type viruses. I don't know if you want to spray with chemical. I mean,
We can treat the water for mosquitoes. That is something that we can do. We traditionally have not done that out there, but we can do that.
Well, I think we're going to have to do something, and I don't know if it looks like somebody going in and putting in some chlorine tabs or whatever is safe to drain to our storm sewers, but we're going to have to, I mean, just saying we're closing them isn't good enough. I mean, we're going to have a plan to either keep them dry or keep whatever water collects in there treated.
And we can certainly put together a detailed plan on that.
I would appreciate it. I think it deserves some consideration. And Commissioner Hodges, I guess I've got one more thing here. You have that the park and the downtown bathrooms represent a significant staffing demand, and I totally get that. Has there been any contemplation of not opening the downtown bathrooms? I mean, when people are in a park, I understand that, they may not want to, drive to the local or the nearest convenience store or whatever. And I feel like we've got somewhat of an obligation to provide those facilities in parks. But in terms of downtown, when there are other options, I'm just looking at, whether or not that might be a way to save some staff hours.
We did talk about that and talked about just kind of the staff time commitment to the bathrooms. And that's the maintenance staff that we didn't furlough or work
right.
share. And we, in all honesty, we were kind of up in the air, but if we don't maintain them, people, they go to the bathroom outside the door.
agreed. Just leave it at that, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, we can certainly look at opening select park restrooms for the ones that have a higher traffic area, but there's still a demand to keep those clean as well.
On behalf of the over 65 population, a park without a bathroom is of relatively little use.
And we
And
did specifically
Commissioner
talk.
Hodges, as the person in the family who always says, you should have planned for that before we got in the car. Yeah, I get you.
We did specifically talk about downtown and the fact that, there's businesses and there might be an opportunity, but not every business accommodates that, and even so, after hours and what have you, we just, we felt like we had the staffing that could keep up on this particular task as we hadn't reduced their schedule, and it's one of those things that we certainly hear about if we don't provide the service.
Okay. Anyone online?
Nope.
No. Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor Hoppick, Commissioner Hodges, I would move that we accept staff's reopening plans for parks facilities, making a special note that we do want to see a mosquito mitigation plan for the Sunset Park ponds and waterfalls.
Commissioner Davis, second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept staff's recommendations for park facilities with special emphasis on addressing the Sunset Ponds / waterfalls mosquito issue. Okay, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0. We done with you, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
I appreciate the hard decisions you guys have had to make, so thank you. Okay, with that, will you send Jim in?
Yes, absolutely.
Can't hardly walk, he's been sitting there so long.
That's me, and hopefully
how we
sooner than later.
All right, our last topic is the drop-off recycling center. Jim Kowach, Public Works Director, should be joining us
There he
shortly.
comes.
Welcome.
Hey, Jim.
Good evening.
Okay.
So yep.
Yep.
A little bit of a delay, you were still talking. Jim Kowach, Public Works Director here in Celina. And hopefully this is the one you're looking for. I think it's the last topic. And then you look for some more. Congratulations on
Oh,
lasting this long.
your mic isn't on.
Is your mic on?
Is that better? It's got a light on it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we're good.
All right. Congratulations on lasting this long. I'll try to make this brief. I'm not going to read all the slides. You've given us quite a bit of input, and we've had quite a few calls about opening the Celina drive-through center, recycling center, and we call it the SDRC, and I'll probably slip up and use that acronym, but it's the Celina drive-through recycling center. And I do want to acknowledge all the hard work that Jim Toich, our operations manager, Sean Dunstan, our sanitation superintendent, and Brent Buchwald put together a plan for us to try to reopen it, because there's a lot of competing interests as far as the work share in different departments and what's going on with city and public works right now. We can ask the question, can we reopen the SDRC? Yes, we can. We can reopen it, but should we is probably the better answer or question. Should we, and is it the right thing to do? And when you guys are considering that question, there's 4 or 5 categories that we think you need to consider. Health, personnel, equipment, time, and the cost. And it's been brought up several times tonight, but with the COVID, there are financial impacts, but there still are health risks. There are health risks to our employees and health risks to our customers. Recyclables in their innate nature, plastics, glass, aluminum cans, all tend to carry or hold the virus, or it can remain active for several days, especially with fluids and stuff that people are drinking. Their bodily fluids, saliva and stuff are on them, and the virus can be transmitted to other people. So that was our ultimate concern when we tried to put a plan together as far as whether or not to open the recycling center. We have multiple people using it back to back to back, even though we only have 2 or 3 people in the building at a time. We average 235 customers a day, and we have several days that are over 300. So that's a lot of times that the same person
is touching people's tubs with saliva-covered bottles and cans, opening their tailgate or their door or their back seat, having to reach in their car to unload it. Just a lot of risk to the employee and to the public in that type of scenario. We considered, well, we could have our employee change gloves, but 300 times a day, plus wiping down their, and we're already backing up traffic onto Santa Fe and North Street because it's very popular and gets very busy at certain times of the day. We have a lot of elderly people in this community, and a lot of them are active recyclists, recycling enthusiasts, and those are our most vulnerable population when it comes to the virus. So we're concerned about that. That may reduce some of the volume, but it may be also putting them at risk. So we were concerned about that. We would, as a minimum, expect our employees to wear masks so that we didn't transmit it through breathing, but as far as changing gloves every time and stuff, we felt like it was going to the grocery store. You wipe the cart off and you wipe your groceries off, or however you feel safe using that facility is the measures you would need to take. And then just the extra time, because we're going to get slammed. People have been saving stuff up in their garage for at least 6 weeks. Some by the time we get it open, maybe 7 or 8 weeks. And we get extremely busy now between residential and, don't forget, small commercial customers. We are also trying to provide a reduced work week to reduce exposure and stuff for sanitation employees. And the people that we had assigned to the drive-through recycling center are currently assigned to sanitation so that we can run an extra route and try to run 6 routes or 7 routes with 32-hour work weeks versus the 5 routes with 40-hour work weeks. We did ask the question, well, if we're concerned about cross-contamination, what about if customers were allowed to just empty their own bins? There again, a lot of those, there are some pictures included in the slideshow where there's large loads that take quite a while to unload. A lot of our customers are elderly and they don't necessarily get around good. It would take them a long time to unload. A lot of customers come in with enough material that it fills up the back of the truck, and then we have to mash it down and they put some more in there. Those trucks are running, there's moving equipment, there's the compressed air of mashing all of that kind of blows broken glass and some of those kinds of things out that we wouldn't want necessarily people to be exposed to those risks. We cannot maintain the 32-hour sanitation schedule without these qualified operators that are also assigned to the SDRC. So we were challenged with how do we come up with a plan to open the SDRC while also maintaining the 32-hour work week for our sanitation services. We currently have some street employees, some of our less experienced street employees, but qualified equipment operators, ones that are more than capable of handling a sanitation truck, especially out on the open road and driving it to Hutch, that wouldn't necessarily be as qualified to change routes every day, go down these narrow alleys, those kinds of things, because they're normally street workers, driving dump trucks and doing manual labor. This would be a new piece of equipment, but we feel like they're qualified to help customers at the recycling center and then operate the equipment, which there will be additional trips to Hutchinson to dump these for the first 2 to 4 weeks, just because there's so much backlog of material that people are going to get frustrated when they see the line there and come back later. So it's just going to be a steady haul for a couple of weeks till we get through the backlog of material. We want to bring 4 furloughed employees back, lower salaried employees back, so that we can operate 2 lines, one on the inside of the building and one on the outside of the building. This will help us by socially distancing the operators, spreading the volume into 2 lines because we are going to be extremely busy, and then also gives us a couple of operators for the extra trips to Hutchinson to dump the materials. We do have the equipment available to operate the 2 lines. We still have 3 trucks assigned to the Salina Drive-Through Recycling Center. We normally keep 2 there. We fill one, and we start filling the other one, and then we'll go dump the one that we're using. We have extra capacity as far as the rear load packer trucks right now, because we put a hold on the purchase of the automated equipment, and we still have the packer trucks that were previously assigned to yard waste. So we have 3 trucks in our fleet that we can put in service for the recycling center. The two-way traffic is on the next slide. I jumped the gun here a little bit, but it shows 1 line inside the building, 1 line outside the building. If it's extremely poor weather, we'd either operate just 1 vehicle, or we can load 2 vehicles in the building. There again, to try to minimize exposure to the people working, be as efficient as we can, we'd like to, or recommend that we change the hours of operation. Currently, the recycling center is open Wednesday through Saturday, 8:30 to 6. The employees work 4 10-hour days, with Wednesday being our highest volume day and Saturday being the next highest day. We would like to change that to 4 8-hour days and a 32-hour work schedule to reduce their exposure, but then also make the employees eligible for the pandemic unemployment pay. If they were on work share, we would need to be very sensitive about the number of hours, so that benefit and that they're not eliminated from that program. And there's a likelihood that people would be at the gate at either noon on Saturday or 4 on a weekday that we wouldn't be able to service. So there may be some unhappy customers. Hopefully that's less unhappy customers than there are now with it being closed. So hiring the 4 additional employees does cost about an extra $1,000 a week. An extra $1,000 a week versus having 2 full-time employees in there. Our staff believes that we have enough in our operating budget to maintain this for a period of 2 to 3 months or longer if necessary. There may be some additional cost of buying gloves and just protecting our employees. As I said, we would expect them to wear at least cloth masks while they're working. We do collect a fee from every water customer account company or customer in the city right now. There's over 20,100 is kind of the round number that we use. We charge each of them $1.25 a month, and that is the revenue source that funds this program. And we have been charging it while the recycling center has been closed. So there are folks that have said if you continue to leave it closed, they'd like a credit. You know, if it were closed till the end of the year, like some programs, it is something that you could credit those water customer accounts $1.25 a month, or some fraction of that, because we do have costs for the utilities in the building, whether it's opened or not. The fees are used to pay the employees' salaries, the fuel, the capital costs for the trucks, and then the disposal of the materials at the recycling MRF in Hutchinson. The plan that we put together here, or proposing to use to open the recycling center, of course, is subject to any new or revised stay-at-home orders. We would have to be in compliance with those. The questions are pretty simple. You folks need to make a decision on whether or not we should reopen the recycling center. Should it have a modified schedule if we do? Or should we go back to a full-time schedule, which does impact the sanitation operation? We're looking for some guidance on whether or not you want to open it, how long you want to keep it open, when we should start, and then how long, if we do go with reduced hours, what the duration should be. So
Mike's Craig. If I could add one clarification, Jim mentioned quite a bit the 32-hour work schedule, and you may recall that we didn't initially propose that to you. The sanitation operation wasn't, we weren't anticipating a financial challenge there necessarily, but part of the conversation you had was, was there a way to get some financial benefit to sanitation workers? So coming out of that conversation, Jim approached me that, recognizing that the work share makes an employee eligible for that $600 a week, that might be an opportunity to provide some financial benefit to our employees. So we tried a test run of that using the SDRC equipment and staff like Jim described, and I'm deferring to Jim, but they seem to think that we can get them on a 32-hour work schedule with that additional staff support, which then benefits our sanitation workers and is cost neutral to us. But that then starts to bring in the need to bring in furloughed public works employees, which would be paid out of the sanitation fund. But even so, I think financially it all covers itself in terms of the reduced work share approach that we're taking. So.
Commissioner, what happens after July 25th when that?
Well, in the broader sense, what we've done is said that we're looking at the windfall, for lack of a better word, of the $600 a week that an employee receives, and then balancing that out with a lesser paycheck from work share. Some employees, they don't, they stay ahead until next spring. So there's an opportunity here that if we stop even before July 25th, but sometime after July 25th, there could be some net financial gain to the employee. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Thank you.
Mayor Hoppick, explain to me how we bring back 4 furloughed employees and it only costs us $1,000 a week. I guess I missed that somehow.
It's compared to the 2 full-time guys that are working, or 2 full-time guys working that average.
But they're not working at the recycling center.
No, in comparing if we open the recycling center with the 2 guys that are normally there compared to 4 new guys, that's where it costs us $1,000.
$1,000 more, but that's not our total expense. What is our total expense to reopen the SDRC?
It's $1,000 a week more than we're paying right now, but I can't. They average $18 an hour and they have 40-hour weeks, the 2 guys that are there now.
But they're not there now.
No, they're working for they're still working for sanitation.
But
The question is, what is it going to cost when we reopen it? And I think what we want to do, what I would like to see happen, this is Commissioner Franz, by the way, I forgot. I would like to be able to get an idea of the degree to which the $1.25 per month covers the cost of operating the center. Am I, and that's going to generate about, what, $25,000 a month based on 20,000 customers.
The break-even budget.
And the question is, would it be break-even with the additional $1,050 a week?
And I don't have hard numbers, but we're realizing savings by having all the other employees on a 32-hour work week.
Right.
So we did run the math. We didn't put it in the slide, but we concluded that we thought that savings would cover the added expense, if that makes sense. Because by the time you take all the sanitation employees and put them on a 32-hour work share.
Again, there's more than one moving part here.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's 2 guys at one rate for 40 hours versus 4 guys
But they're furloughed
at a lower
now.
rate.
They're furloughed now.
They're furloughed now.
So we're not paying them anything. If they're furloughed, they're on unemployment
Right.
plus the, yes.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm still missing the math.
We're bringing them on sanitation, so they're not coming out of public works. And so, right or wrong, we're starting from a baseline of when it was fully operational and fully staffed, it broke even. So that's why we kind of focused on the
What
increment.
would it cost us?
$2,000 a week
Thank
for
you.
those 4 employees, because they make about $15 an hour, 32 hours a week for 4 employees. It's $19.20.
Commissioner Hodges, and I may be off base, but my question was more geared to, and I'm sure in all the presentations we've had, I'm sure that I probably could have looked it up myself, but when we look at the program in total, the rent, the utilities, the personnel, the trips to Hutchinson, when we look at all of that in total, what does the recycling center cost us either weekly or monthly?
It's just under $250,000 a year,
Okay,
or $20,000 a month times 12 months.
okay. And I apologize for sandbagging you, and because I don't mean to. Do we have any sense of how much of that is a fixed overhead in terms of like the rent that we've got to pay and the utilities that we've got to pay? I mean, because what I'm trying to figure out is like the overall impact if we don't reopen it at all, and we've still got the fixed costs that we're responsible for. How does that relate to, can we afford to go ahead and discontinue the $1.25 a month SDRC fee that's being charged to water customers? I mean, where does that put us financially, if that makes sense? Like, what are we paying in rent? What's our fixed cost?
The fixed cost for the building utilities is less than $40,000 a year.
Okay.
I cannot give you a figure for the capital costs of the sanitation trucks annualized per year,
Okay.
but the fixed cost for the building utilities is less than 40.
Okay. Okay.
I know it's over 30, but it's less than 40.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just trying to get a ballpark idea of.
So the fuel, the trucks, the tipping fee, and the employees cost the other $200,000.
Okay.
Because we've been Mayor Hoppick here, because we've been collecting that $1.25 now, it was $1. We should have does that go into like a separate account? I mean, to me, because it goes to the recycling, those dollars ought to sit in like an escrow account, so we kind of know what our balance is.
It's combined with the sanitation budget right now. We had talked about establishing its own reserve fund or to buy equipment and those kinds of things. I believe it's all just part of the sanitation budget at this time.
That's correct.
But it would be possible to calculate what that balance should be, at least in fairly close terms, by looking at the expenses of the recycling center and the amount you've billed out and collected on that $1.25 a month.
Because we should be way ahead.
And I'm kind of looking at Ms. Pack, because I don't know that you could come up necessarily with a precise number, but you could come up with something that was fairly close as to what part of that balance should be allocated to recycling versus the rest of the sanitation operation,
For the most
I believe.
part, I understand why we'd say we should be ahead. There was a block of time there where they doubled our tipping fee before we adjusted our fee to catch up. So we were paying twice as much as we were used to in tipping. We still are, but we've adjusted the fee to cover that. So there might be
But
a
I guess
little
that's
bit of-
where I'm at. I don't know whether we're ahead or behind on our recycling balance, based
We
on.
believe we're a little bit ahead. And that's why, for the next few months, if it's $1,000 a week, Mr. Toitz thought that the fund balance or what he calculated in the reserve, or as far as trying to make it balance, it would work out okay as far as breaking even.
How many sanitation employees would be put on a 32-hour week?
Because we're using, it's 5 drivers. We've got a couple of our specials driver and our cart person, so there's 7, and then we've got some worker drivers. It's 11 or 12 people total. The rest of the sanitation crews are made up with temporary employees now, because we're in that flux between rear load and automated trucks. We're still running anywhere from 6 to 9 temporary employees a day to run our normal sanitation routes.
So my simple math, and Debbie and I did this Friday afternoon, evening, I guess, but if you had 10 employees that you backed off each one of their schedules by 8 hours, that's 80 hours. Right. And you brought on 2 employees at 32 hours apiece, that's 64 hours. So we're realizing more savings in terms of the adjusted work schedule than we're bringing on additional staff to support that adjusted work schedule. So that was a down and dirty way of kind of concluding that we thought it would break even.
We think because of the volume, we don't think we can operate it with 2 new employees. Because they're going to be gone with making trips to Hutch, and one person can't handle that kind of volume.
And the volume, Mayor Hoppick here, the volume will slow down after a couple weeks, I would guess.
We would hope.
Once,
But if we are working at reduced hours, 32 instead of 40, it compresses the volume per hour, that they may be just as busy during those 4 days as they were previously.
So I guess this, Mayor Hoppick here, I guess the second question gets into the health-related issue of unloading and loading stuff. Do we have any comments on that?
Commissioner Hodges, I was shocked when I saw these photos.
I know.
I mean, I really was. I just assumed that, since we just recently discontinued the curbside pickup, I haven't had to use it but a few times, but I just assumed that everybody would have their recyclables packaged up the way I do, which is admittedly a little bit OCD, or a lot OCD, depending on your tolerance for filth. And it looks like a lot of people just show up with junk in the back of their vans or on their trailers. And I mean, you've got employees that are using rakes that are reaching directly into people's vehicles. Just from a public health standpoint, I don't see how we can ask workers to come into contact with potentially contaminated materials. And I think it also presents a really excellent environment to cross-contaminate with people who are bringing their vehicles into the center. And I think that's maybe the greater of my 2 concerns here is I like the fact that you guys have tried to figure out a way to make it work as safely as possible, but at this point, I have an awful lot of reservations about whether we can do this safely for our employees and for our patrons.
Yeah, Mayor Hoppick here, I picture everybody putting in a
Yes.
container like I had.
Yes.
And you pick it up, you dump it, and you walk away. But I'm like you,
Commissioner, and I don't go every week, I wasn't going every week, but fairly frequently, even with the curbside pickup. These pictures are more the exception than the rule. I mean, I've seen some people come in with big loads, but
this is Jim Kowach, Public Works Director. One of the larger loads on the top is J&N Recycling, with the white van. The large load of cardboard is just one of the businesses downtown. The picture with all of the bags that are scattered, it was one day when they were just getting slammed, and anybody that showed up with bags, they would put them on the floor and shoo them out, just trying to keep up with the volume and keep traffic from backing up Santa Fe. And traffic has been backed up Santa Fe and down North Street past the exit before. But it's a very popular place. It goes pretty quickly, but we don't like having traffic backed up out into the street either, so.
And the issue with bags is they have to be torn open and dumped.
Bags have to be torn open, and we don't like patrons to leave before we look at their stuff, because we try to return stuff like styrofoam and plastic bags and the things that we don't accept right to them so that they know not to bring them the next time.
Mayor Hoppick here, and the problem with gloves is they give you a false sense of security, but you touch something with your gloves, you touch your face, I mean, you're better off using your hands and washing your hands than having gloves in some cases. I mean, I think people think that they have gloves on, they're safe, but they're really not. And if you're picking and opening up bags, I think you're
Commissioner, you just have to learn. I mean, is there running water in that building?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, they'll learn where not to put their hands. But, when I look at these pictures, what I'm saying is, okay, if J&N is picking up a lot of stuff and he's picking it up on a regular basis, he ought to have an appointment to come in at a certain time and you could pick the time, be it at the beginning of the shift or end of the shift or when it's not busy, because you know he's going to have a big load and unload that. But these pictures also tell me, wow, there really ought to be a separate drop-off place for cardboard. Because to unload all that stuff, put it in the truck, crunch it all up, send it someplace so they can uncrunch it and separate it is just not logical to me at all. And I know the place in Hutch probably counts on the cardboard coming as part of their revenue stream, but this is an opportunity to kind of long range. We work the whole process, but big loads like that should probably get appointments, because most of the time I'm coming. I mean, some of the older people will accumulate a month's worth of stuff and bring it in at one time, but on the other hand, they got the stuff in the car. They could probably help get it out. Now, I don't know about the air compressor. I'll take your word on that. I'm never standing next to it when they operate that thing. But is the exhaust vented out? It's captured like fire trucks in the station?
Yeah, Jim Coates, Public Works Director. Yes, we have one system, so we generally just operate one vehicle in the building at a time. But it is running the whole time, and there's an exhaust vacuum system that is hooked to the tailpipe and puts it outside the building. We also have carbon monoxide detectors, and we're constantly monitoring it. We have 2 oversized doors that are open all day that we've never had any levels that were anywhere considered harmful.
Mayor Hoppick here. Jim, the sacks, why do they have to be reopened? Because we cannot recycle the plastic bags?
Yes, the bags are not acceptable, and we also want to make sure that they're not full of cotton rags or other debris or trash that's not considered acceptable either.
Yeah, I have an issue with that.
And they have told people ever since we've opened, that they'll take the bags, but we really prefer them in tubs or cardboard boxes or whatever. But there still are several people that show up with plastic bags.
Maybe comes a point where we don't accept them. If it's in a plastic sack, you said it's out of here. We're not taking it. Mainly in today's environment, if we were to open this up, I would say we would not accept anything in a plastic bag.
Unless the bag can be dumped. I mean, I'm assuming they didn't have time to dump these bags.
It looks like they're all tied. I'm guessing they're all tied.
Right, if it's not tied, then then the plastic bag is not much different than a cardboard box. But it's known that the plastic bag is leaving that building with the car. Yeah.
It generally does, but we have waste cans there that we're in the business, but they just stand them up on a hook on the truck, and they rip them open, they dump them in there, they look to make sure there's not any other contaminations, and then they put the plastic bag in a trash can.
But in today's environment, they'd be dumping that, and there's styrofoam there. They're having to pull that styrofoam out.
Yes. Styrofoam or plastic or wood or other plastic bags, those kinds of things.
Another advantage for collecting it sorted.
Any comments from this side of the room?
We do have a caller.
Okay.
We have a caller with a number ending in 5323. You are unmuted. They didn't actually raise their hand. I guess I assumed they wanted to talk, but with the delay, we'll...
Okay.
I didn't have a question. I was just using the phone to hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. I made the false assumption you wanted to speak. Sorry about that.
You would be reimbursed. I was just listening for that.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Hoppick, to follow up his question, I'm guessing if we were not to reopen the recycling center, I don't know about refunding what we've collected, but we would need to reduce what we're collecting at least to some
Commissioner
number.
Franz, I have, I don't like the way we're doing this, but it's the way we are doing it. And I think if we collect the fee, we ought to try to reopen the center and accommodate the folks who are used to using it. But long-term, I would like to revisit the whole, I hate to say this, the whole process again, because I just, as the pictures show, it's very hard to control what comes in and how much we have to sort it before we send the people out, and just the whole arrangement strikes me as very cumbersome and makeshift, and I don't know that there's a better way, but I am not comfortable with the way we do this. That being said, I would support reopening the center, at least in response to our situation now, or in the alternative, we need to pull the charge off the bill and if necessary, perhaps look at a refund for the month or so it's been closed.
Commissioner Ryan, here at this stage, I agree with Mr. Franz. I think we should maintain it open until we get back to reconsidering our whole refuse process again. And I know that most of the people I've heard from on this issue have stored a great deal of recyclables in their garages or their sheds, and we need to give them a chance to vent that out. But maybe we revisit this the end of the year or so.
Mayor Hoppick, and recycling has been one of the hot buttons for individuals. I know that those people that want to do it, I'm still not sure it's cost effective the way we do it when we have a dump that has a 150-year life expectancy. But if we were to do this and a motion was made for me to go along with it, we would not be able to accept plastic bags, at least right now, in today's environment.
No, you mean the recyclables
inside
of a plastic bag?
So, Mayor, you're saying
because we're requiring our employees to open those up, dump it. You're just adding to their exposure.
So they would just take that bag back with them?
If somebody came in with 10 sacks in a plastic bag like this shows, they take them with them.
With the contents, you're saying?
With the contents, yeah.
We would not accept learn very fast.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hodges, I still just come back to the fact that when I look at the staff sorting through the materials that are brought in, plastic bags, materials brought in plastic bags are obviously a problem. I don't know that you could pay me enough at this point to be entering people's vehicles, pulling out materials that may or may not be contaminated. And don't get me wrong, I understand that living in Celina with a low population density, that does offer us some protections. But at the same time, it just seems like we're kind of, if we continue this, it's like we're saying to the sanitation workers, we're willing to take a chance with your health because we're getting a lot of flack about people wanting to recycle. And it's a problematic recycling because we're then driving it to Hutchinson. And I just feel like it's a lot of risk to our employees for very little gain. And I would be, just to make us feel good about ourselves, if we're being really, really, really honest. But I'm fine with not reopening it at the present time, eliminating the $125 a month fee. And I don't know about refunding for the time that we've been closed, but I guess I'm making that in the form of a motion, if that's appropriate, that we do not reopen the SDRC and discontinue collecting the $1.25 a month fee that's being charged to water customers.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I'm a little bit on Commissioner Hodges' side there, so just to get a vote, I believe I'm allowed to second that motion, so I will second that motion.
Okay, with discussion. Commissioner Davis, any sanitation employee is going to be exposed to the same risk as far as contaminated material. I mean, and the only way you get around that is with full automation. As far as, and Commissioner Franz hit it right on. The whole process does need to be rethought. There are some things we collect that we probably don't need to waste our time collecting because there's no recycling use, let alone profitable market for. And the things that we, find useful, we should become very good at reusing it. Where you start making headway is when you don't buy the stuff that turns into trash to begin with. So, I mean, it's a long process. It's not going to be solved in 2020. But I don't want to lose the initiative we have here, because the same folks who are recycling now will be the ones who bring the initiative to start working on, okay, this is Salina, Kansas, we think great about ourselves. You can't bring stuff in here in plastic 6 and 7. We just don't sell it here. All that cardboard, makes a point for neighborhood collection of cardboard. Or if you have 3 services that collect stuff, 3 trucks could probably bring stuff in there in less time than 50 cars. So there are a lot of ways we can do it, but I've got more calls about opening this up. Golf course is a close second. Baseball's right there behind it. But there's a lot of energy in this community for recycling. And we're not doing this for the environment. For us, it's our kids and our grandkids. We're not going to live long enough probably to where all that stuff in the ground is going to bite us in the butt. But the next generation, the one after that, they're going to have a price to pay. So it's I just can't be that selfish about me, knowing the mess. That's if global warming doesn't get us first. But you got to start somewhere.
Okay, Mayor Hopp, we have a motion and a second on the floor to not reopen the SDRC and to, I guess, terminate the funds being collected on the water bill. Is that the best way to put it?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay.
Okay. That fails 2-3. Do we have another motion someone would like to make?
Mayor, this is Commissioner Ryan. I would move that we reopen the SDRC using the modified staffing schedule and hours as proposed, excluding the receiving of black trash bags, and with the understanding that we're going to reconsider the SDRC's value at the end of the current 2020 year.
Commissioner Davis, I'll second that with just change any plastic bag.
Any plastic black or
Not
white.
just black
Yeah.
bags, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any color. Blue, red, we don't care. Okay. We have a motion to, yes.
Do our rules currently allow clear plastic bags? If I recollect?
No.
They don't, okay.
No,
I
we
thought
do
they-
require, we have someone that takes shredded paper for us, which we collect separately.
That's the clear plastic,
And they
right.
put it in clear plastic to make sure that we know that it's just shredded paper and it's not. I don't want to give you folks the false impression that those messes, hot messes that we showed you with the big trucks and the messy loads are the exception more than the rule, but we get some of those every day. You can go 6 cars in a row and it's everybody with just one Tupperware thing that they want to dump, and they're out in 30 seconds, literally. We get 300 customers a day. We have some messy loads like that, and operating 2 lines will allow us at least to get them out of the way, so the flow of smaller vehicles can proceed, and we can keep vehicles out of traffic. So we are getting a break on the price of our recyclables. It's the lowest in central Kansas because it is so clean, because we have people monitoring it, that you would not believe the debris and the different things that get put in those unmanned boxes. That we had our stuff tested at 3 different landfills or MRFs when we were looking at places to go, and they all wanted our material. There is another sanitation service here in town that does accept cardboard. We don't force people to go use them, but there is an alternate source in town now. So there's some of the problems you've talked about, there are solutions. But the SDRC, our customers love it. It's clean, it's fast, it's efficient. We think we can operate it on a reduced schedule and keep our people safe and our customers safe, but it's not without risk. You know, that's the environment that we're in right now.
Commissioner Davis, will the shredded paper still be accepted under this?
Yeah.
So that would be the one exception to
Well,
it has to be in a clear plastic
Yeah.
bag. Okay.
And we do take tinfoil if it's separate, because it's usually just, you can bring it in, it's balled up, we know it's tinfoil.
Right.
That's part of the local recycler here in town. We donate, or we give it to him, and he donates all the proceeds to the animal shelter, so,
Wow. So that should be separated?
yes.
Okay.
Okay. Mayor Hoppick here. We have a motion and a second to approve reopening the SDRC, make sure I get those initials right, SDRC, with the exception we will not accept recycling in plastic bags. Does that sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, that passes 3-2. And I will say that I'm not against recycling. In fact, I have some in my garage that will be delivered the first week it's open. I do believe from looking at these, there is a little bit of an additional risk to the employees versus those sanitation workers that are picking up at the curbside. So anyway. Okay.
One quick question, this is Jim Kowach, is Public Works Director. One of the things that it will take us a while just to stand it up, and didn't know as far as expectations, as far as an effective date, and or if you had some thoughts on the duration, so as far as a reduced schedule.
Yeah,
or will that depend on the
If it's
county
permissible
health?
with you, I think we'll staff that through both in
Yeah.
terms of the practicality of opening it up, and then we'll run numbers on the financial benefit to the employees and look at our performance and see when we can get, how quickly we can get back to normal. We can report back to you on those.
Thank you, Jim. We have no development business. Do we have any other business?
I just have one item. Commissioner Hodges, I did just want to, and I'm probably going to just keep returning to this until it actually, if it ever does end up on our agenda, in terms of when we're going to be able to review some of the other contracts that that we have outstanding.
I think I mentioned last week when I committed to
Yes.
this presentation, that's what was going to take this week. So
Right.
it's still on the list. I recognize it's a priority. We're working nights, weekends, trying to keep up.
Oh, I'm not questioning your workload in any way whatsoever. It's just one of those things that I'm just going to.
Sure. I'm not forgetting about it either. And a couple of the bigger ticket items, CVB as an example, what their proceeds go up and down with the financial impacts of the pandemic. So we've inventoried them both in terms of vendors and contracts, and it's going to be a one-on-one conversation I'm going to have with each one of them.
Commissioner Davis, there was one, is Design Review Board or Planning Commission still on schedule to resume business in the next 2 weeks?
Yes, Planning Commission is May 18th. I don't know the Design Review Board off the top of my head, but we have advertised the Planning Commission, and we're working on a revised meeting schedule to bring back to you in the form of a resolution for all of our main boards and committees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Franz, if I might have a moment to comment. I know that from time to time tonight I got a little frustrated and may have appeared to be a little testy from time to time, and I apologize for that, but it's just an expression of frustration with this whole process and how unpleasant I find it to have to do this. So I apologize for any inappropriate comments or conduct.
Commissioner Hodges here. Don't worry, Commissioner France, I've set that bar so low. So at any rate, you're doing great.
Mayor Hoppick here, you've kind of took away a little bit of what I was going to discuss. First of all, I believe we have a couple items that you're going to bring back to us on the Celina.
Yes, the follow-up items, Camp Celina and some of those,
We would hate to have you leave without any homework, so we didn't do some homework.
I'm taking note of it.
I'm going to follow up what Commissioner Franz said. This, again, we talked about this was not going to be a fun process, and the last month or two has not been fun to be a commissioner, but I want to thank my fellow commissioners. Even though we had different views, I thought we handled it very professionally tonight, and I appreciate that, and that means a lot as mayor, and I'd like to thank staff for their work. I know they put in extra hours, and hopefully we'll get through this and we can talk about something fun one of these days. So with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone.
I look forward to restoring some of these recreation programs,